Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of BCS Community Connections podcast. And today on the podcast, I have none other than Ms. Beth Symons from Beth Symons Fine Art.
You got it.
All right.
Yeah.
So Beth came on today, and what we want to do is we want to spend a little bit of time talking about your art that you are doing. Virtual studio kind of,
You could call it a virtual studio. Yeah, I don't have an actual studio that I sit and paint at. Usually, right. I've got a little desk in a corner of my living room that I sometimes paint at, but usually I sit at my kitchen table.
Yeah, so you're, what I've noticed here as a reason we were talking in pre-show, your stuff is becoming very popular. I'm starting to see a lot of your paintings showing up with a lot of my friends and people that I am connected with here in town. We've kind of been talking about getting together to do this here for a little bit and get together to talk about some of the things that you're doing in town, some things that were kind of striking irons hot, and we'll go into that kind of stuff. But I mean, some of the stuff you've done, I mean, it comes across my feed, and it's almost like the stuff that you're creating. Like, I know that's Beth's stuff.
Yay.
I mean, it's really kind of separating itself from other things
cool.
that I've
That's
seen.
That's a cool feeling.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited to talk about this stuff. But before we get too far off into talking about you and your art and commission pieces that you've done and things like that, we want to talk about you first. So want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit about you, where you're from, where you grew up, what brought you here to College Station, family, dogs, any of that kind of stuff that you've got. Kind of want to talk a little bit about that so people can kind of get to know a little bit more about you out past the art piece.
Absolutely. So. Well, I was born and raised in a little town called Fayette, Missouri, and it is right smack dab in the middle of Missouri, about 2 hours from Kansas City, 2 hours from St. Louis. Little farming community, very rural. And my parents moved there about when I was 2 years old. Okay. And I lived there for 25 years. And in 2008, I was in a place where I knew that if I didn't leave, that I was going to be there forever. And I didn't want to be there forever. I love my hometown. All of my family is still there. Yeah. But I just had this insatiable urge to be somewhere else.
Well, and this is the kind of hometown of everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. All my dirty laundry was on the courthouse square.
Yeah, I've lived in a couple of those kind of towns. You know, people know who you're related to. They know what you've done, where you're at, when you're supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I needed to get far away, and I had a couple of friends that lived here in College Station. Okay. And it was far enough away where I felt like I could kind of start over and still know a couple people, and they were literally the only two people that I knew here when I moved here.
You're still technically kind of in driving distance. I mean, it's not like you're halfway across.
It's about a 14-hour drive. Yeah. So I make it once to twice a year. I go see my family in Missouri.
You're not across the country. No. You're not overseas. You're not any of that stuff. So
it's not terrible. It's far enough away to where I feel like I have my own little bubble here now, but I can go visit when I want to and see my family and get to spend time with my nephews.
So you moved here, hooked up with some of your friends, moved in with them.
Yep. I actually, when I first moved here, this is a strange story. I was living with one of the girls that I knew when I moved here, and my car got broken into. I was sleeping on her couch. My car got broken into like the second night I was here.
Nice. And welcome to College Station.
Right. And I had pretty much my whole life in that car, and they took everything, and I had nothing. And shortly after that, she and I had a falling out, and I was left with no place to go. Wow. Yeah. And so I found myself sleeping in my car, and estranged from the only people that I knew in this city, and thinking, okay, what do I do now? Yeah. And I called my mom, and my mom's always been the kind of lady who's a tough love, sort of, well, figure it out. You know, you've come this far, don't quit now. And she was like, find a women's shelter. I was like, I don't know how to find one. Yeah, thanks, Mom.
Yeah, your mom was all about it.
She was like, find a women's shelter. And I was like, I don't want to find a women's shelter. I just want to. And I had another dear friend.
You wanted to be independent. Here you go.
I didn't want to be at a women's shelter. I wanted, So I called my friend Hope back home, and she said, oh, honey. And she and her husband, Shepherd, got me a hotel room for, I think, about a week until I was able to get a job. I came here with no job, no plan really, just fly by the seat of my pants, and got a job, found a place to live, and things kind of went more smoothly after that. So I wasn't homeless for too long.
So were you 25, 26?
I was 25.
All right. So you come here, find yourself here in College Station. You said you landed your first job. Where was your first job?
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh, yeah, man.
Hey.
Listen, there's two things that most people, you'll hear a lot of people say this, and there's a lot of value in this. But if you're going to have a job, it pays to learn either food service,
absolutely,
or retail.
Well, I'd worked in both before I moved here, and so it was the obvious choice. I knew the industry pretty well. So I was at Buffalo Wild Wings for about a year. Oh no, I'd say about 6 to 8 months. I was there from September of 2008 until January of 2009, where one evening I decided to cross University on foot, and I got hit by a car walking, not in a crosswalk. And I mean, it was she wasn't watching. I didn't see her coming. She hit me going about 30 miles an hour, knocked my shoes off. I ended up, obviously, they called ambulance, took me emergency room, and I was completely out of it. And my amazing coworkers at Buffalo Wild Wings got together and pooled. This was before, what's the? GoFundMe. Yeah, this was before GoFundMe really had a following, or people used that to raise money. And they all got together and raised enough money to pay my rent while I was gone. And my family came and picked me up and took me back to Missouri so I could heal. And I lived with my sister for about 2 to 3 months. And then those same people got me a one-way ticket back to Texas and brought me home. So
they weren't letting you stay there.
They were not letting me stay, and I really credit them to, I don't know, just why I'm still here.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have, I hadn't met my ex-husband or had a kid at the time. I was just flying solo. And so I very well could have given up and stayed back in Missouri and said, well, I guess Texas wasn't for me, but they weren't having it.
Yeah.
So
there's cars in Texas.
There's cars. There's big old trucks in Texas.
Yeah. So they get you back down here. They really, those were friends though that really kind of knew what you were trying to do anyway. I mean, they knew that. Yeah.
They're still friends to this day.
Yeah. They knew you were trying to get away, build your own life, stand on your own 2 feet, even though one of them might've been broken at that time.
Yeah. but good one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be here after hours.
Oh, man.
So anyway, so you go through this process. They get you back here to town, get you situated back in. Managed to keep your place while you were gone?
Managed to keep my place while I was gone. And then we kind of had a homecoming party up at Ozona Bar and Grill. And that's where I met my now ex-husband, but that's where I met my future husband.
Yeah.
Chris. And he was there with a group of friends. I was there with my group of friends who had got me back to Texas. And I noticed him, he noticed me. We got to talking. He asked me out on a date, and the rest is history. So we dated for a year. Got engaged. We're engaged for a year, and then got married and had Lila Joy.
Yeah. So your daughter's 9?
She's 9. She just turned 9 in December, so she's into the 9-year stage. A couple of months.
Yeah, we were talking about that in pre-show. I was telling her that Abigail's 9. By the time this comes out, she'll be 10, I think, because this releases in May. But it's fun. It's a fun stage to have them at.
I love it. Yeah. And as you were saying, it's before really they've let the world get to them.
Taint them.
I hate that word, but we'll use it.
Yeah. It's right in between. I mean, it's they still have the innocence about them and everything. They're sweet. She still
wants to be around me.
I mean, we keep trying to brainwash Abigail. We keep telling her, like, you're going to live with us forever, right? You're always going to be here. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm never leaving. I'm like, okay. I guess I got about maybe 2 years, 3 years.
I have the opposite conversation with Lila. She thinks she's going to live here forever, and I'm like, no, you're not.
Let me tell you how my mom tough loved me. There's a women's shelter somewhere calling you.
Get on out of here.
That's right.
She goes, well, I'm just going to stay in College Station forever. And I was like, honey, at least go explore the world before you decide that. I said, you can always come back here. It's a beautiful place to live. I know you love it now. But go see some other things. And then if you're drawn back to College Station, then, I don't know if I'll still be here, but
Well, we've lived all over. I will tell you this. The one thing that I do love about the Bryan-College Station area, and I've said it multiple times, this is a great place to raise a family.
It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
If I had my pick of any other place, I don't know that I'd change it.
Yeah.
I think the community here is just, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. It is, I don't say big city because it's not a big city in comparison, but it has small town feel. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely one of those places where like people rise to the occasion based on the need, right? Like if there is a need, something happens, the outpouring from the community is always unbelievable.
It really is.
And then you have this village, really when you talk about, raising a family in here and everything else, the school systems, I mean, all of the stuff that if you don't have kids and you live here in town, especially if you're younger, then you're over here going, oh, there's a lot of places I can go drink and party and all this other kind of stuff. But, my wife and I laughed about it because when we first moved to the College Station area, when I was with Walmart, I told my wife, it's Texas A&M, so we're probably going to have a bunch of drunk kids all around us partying all the time. And it's just your envisionment. I never lived in a college town, so to say, that had been driven by a college. And that was just kind of the first outsider reactions that I had was, there's 68,000 kids that go to this one school. Plus there's another school across town that a whole bunch of people go to too. So
double whammy.
Yeah. And then we got here and then you start embedding yourself into the community and then you start realizing the culture of the school, right? And then the culture of the school, like, man, these kids are really well behaved.
They really are. Yeah.
I know we're generalizing here, right? There's always going to be there's always going to be some. But my deal with my wife was like, you would think there would be a lot more going on, a lot more stuff that you'd be hearing about all the time. And we came from San Antonio. I mean, we grew up in San Antonio. You can't get through the first 15 minutes.
City.
Yeah, you can't get through the first 15 minutes without, them telling you how many people died, shot, and killed, and everything else. And so for us to come into this environment, we have our daughter. My daughter was born over at St. Joseph's. And then we're able to raise her in this environment was just a huge blessing for us. And
I've heard it referred to as a bubble, and it really is. It's kind of a little protective bubble, and that does make it a great place to raise a family. I don't want Lila to be so jaded or naive to think that bad things can't happen here, but
they can happen anywhere.
See, as of lately, we've had some very tragic things in our community happen, and that's been hard to explain to a 9-year-old. Yeah. But important. I don't want her. I feel like I was incredibly sheltered, so much so that once I left kind of my bubble in Missouri, there was some culture shock.
I was going to say, this probably felt like huge.
It did at the time. It felt big. I feel like I've kind of grown and adjusted to what it is now. But when I moved here, I liked it because it was so much bigger than where I was from. But not Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. There's no way I would have.
There's nothing funnier than listening to a local talk about how bad the traffic is on Texas Avenue when you come from I-35 that connects Austin and San Antonio, which has virtually been under construction my entire life.
It's never not under construction.
And you're just sitting there like you have no clue, right? Sure. And then us in Texas, we complain about I-35s and places like that, I-10. And then there are people that, are in California who are like, y'all really don't have a clue.
Exactly.
Take this drive up to Los Angeles, see how this works for you.
Right.
So it's a great community to be able to raise your family. So she comes along, really kind of centers you, like this is pretty much where you're going to be at this point.
I really didn't have a choice. Her dad and I were divorced about right around her first birthday. Okay. And so the way the custody plan worked out was that he would have her half time and I would have her half time. Yeah. And so it took me a couple months to realize that not only did I not have that structured family now for her with a mom and a dad and the family traditional, but that I was going to be here until she was old enough to be on her own. Yeah. And so I think once I made that realization and just I had to decide, okay, we're going to make the most of it. Like, I'm here. Yeah. What can I do to be successful, to be happy? I could wallow for 18 years and be really sad and mad and unproductive, but that's just not it's not in my personality to do that. So
yeah, and it's not like, there would be way worse places to be. So.
Way worse. And I had her.
Yeah.
And she loves it here. She still loves it here, and so we make the absolute most out of where we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So Buffalo Wild Wings, Lila's here. You transition, and tell me some of your work history, where you were at. Yeah. Not like every job you've had.
No, there's been a few. So the longest job that I had here was working at a retirement community for almost 5 years. I was there from 2010 to 2015, I think. Maybe not quite 15. Anyway, so I was the activities director there for almost 5 years, and so it was my responsibility to find things for my residents to do.
Yeah.
That kept them healthy in mind, healthy in body, spirit, physically, doing activities that just they continued to feel
plugged in.
Like life needed to be almost as normal as possible. It was an independent living community, so they each had their own apartment.
Yeah.
We had a common dining space, community center room. It was a really, really cool place to be. But when you're there for 5 years, you got to get creative a little bit about activities that you do.
And don't mess with their bingo.
Do not. Oh my gosh. Man, bingo is like, you do not mess with their bingo.
One of the things we did pretty religiously with Walmart is during the holidays, we would go and spend time at some of the nursing homes.
And sponsor prizes.
We did that, and let me tell you, I've been involved in many a bingo calling game there, and I made the mistake one time of accidentally calling the wrong number.
Oh, they'll tell you.
Dude, they were on me like nobody's business, and like the ladies in the back like going, it's like you got to make sure you call the numbers correctly, because if somebody gets a bingo off of a number that you called wrong, there's going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah. It's a problem.
Like, they'll take you out back.
Yeah. One of my favorite activities of things that we did there, there were two things. We had a Miss Waldenberg pageant, because I'm a pageant girl. I came from the pageant community. I was in the top 10 of Miss Missouri State Fair back in 2004. And that came after my title of Miss Howard County. So I had the crown and the sash, and I knew the pageant world pretty well. I'd done pageants when I was younger, Miss Preteen America, that kind of thing. And back then, pageants weren't what they are now.
No.
I had a homemade dress for my Aunt Capitola. I had a short bowl cut. It was interesting. So we did
Pinterest to go to.
I didn't have anything.
You didn't have cheer moms and all that kind of stuff.
Totally different than it is now. But we had a Miss Waldenberg pageant, and we had about 6 contestants, I think, and we had celebrity guest judges, and they competed in evening wear and talent, and then like an onstage question. And we had a Mary Kay rep come in and do their makeup.
Nice.
And we had our panel of judges. And
you were probably too small for glamour shots to be in town.
Oh, no, I did glamour shots. I promise you, I did glamour shots. So that was one of I loved that, because it was just right in my realm. It was creative. It was fun for them. We crowned a Miss Waldenbrook, and she was the reigning, senior living queen. And so great. Right. So we put on plays. Just a lot of things. The point I'm getting to, really, is that was where I discovered my love of watercolor.
Oh, yeah.
Was there, because I thought, I was running out of things to do, and I thought, well, we haven't played with watercolor yet, and I hadn't either. So I knew it would be something fun. I didn't have any real structure planned for the class. I thought, I'll get these paints and the paper, and we'll just sit down and play with it. I didn't have anybody that was going to come in and teach, and I can remember sitting down with them in our little garden area. It was an indoor kind of like a windowed atrium, and the light was really beautiful in there, and painting for the first time with watercolor, and just having like one of those Oprah aha moments where I was like, oh, I really like this. This is it. This is it.
Yes. You get a watercolor. You get a watercolor.
Man, it was such a cool experience. And so I started experimenting more. I went out and bought my own set, just the cheap Walmart version of paint and paper. And I just sat down and I got to work, and I was like, how do I do this? And what do I do? And I'd always been an artist. I'd won several awards on some art shows, but it was always for like some abstract acrylic stuff, which I still enjoy. But that was the extent of my painting experience, was in acrylics and such. So I've always been artistic, but not with watercolors like I am now.
It wasn't something you went to school for.
No.
I mean, this is just kind of something that followed along with you. Did you find you were always good at drawing?
Always, since I've always been incredibly artistic and creative. I always joke that I'm so heavily right-brained, I should probably walk with a little bit of a lean that way, because I've played the piano since I was 6 by ear. I love photography, writing, anything that requires creativity and translating beauty in some way has always really struck a chord with me. But watercolor, I just fell in love with it.
Well, and so I noticed you've done things, because we were talking about the photography piece, and we'll probably touch on that here a little bit later, but your drawings, and is your drawings more like, for you when you're drawing, is it more like realistic, reality-based drawing, but your watercolors, your acrylics, the things that you're doing like that kind of stretch both mediums? They go from realism to abstract?
They do. I know we were going to probably get into this at some point, but I have what's called aphantasia, and that just means that I have the inability to have a mind's eye like most people do. So when you close your eyes, you see pictures, and I see complete darkness. And I think about 2% of the population has that. So it's let's touch on this, because this was like, in my research of you, this was one of the things that we probably spent the most time in pre-show on, because to me it's fascinating. Like, you think of the idea that, most people, and we were talking about even like when you were a kid, because I was asking like, when did you realize it, how far back, that kind of stuff. And then I think about like when I was in school, and the teacher would tell you like, close your eyes and visualize.
Picture this, or, and that kind of stuff. I was
just kind of like, okay.
Well, but your comment was like, I just kind of assumed like everybody saw black when they closed their eyes. I always assumed
that was the universal way that, when you closed your eyes, that was your time to mentally shut off, that you didn't see anything, that it was just completely dark up there for everybody. And so when I was made aware of aphantasia, and that people actually saw visuals in their mind like they would a movie, or as they do in real life, just that concept to me was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait a second, you actually you see things in your mind? Like, how? What's wrong with you? That's not normal.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was really more of the abnormal one.
And not only that, I think it's fascinating from the idea that the perception from most people would be that an artist uses that recall, I guess. I mean, I'm not even sure what word to put on it, but the idea to be able to close your eyes and say, okay, I see whatever. We'll say dogs in this situation. I see this, golden doodle with these shades of colors and with, this type of hair and, that type of stuff. And then your eyes open and you paint that onto a canvas or draw it. Yeah,
I can't do it. So I have more than one style of painting. There's a style of painting where I have a visual reference.
Right.
It's usually a photograph.
Right.
And I can paint very, very realistic paintings if I'm using a photo reference that I have right next to me to look and say, okay, this shade of brown is here, and there's a little bit of pink in this dog's eyes. Then I can replicate
what you see,
what I see
visually,
what I see with my eyes open, a picture of. Take that picture away, and I can still paint. You're going to get a much more abstract version of that dog. So I know in my mind that the dog has long blonde hair if it's a golden retriever. I know that because I've seen a golden retriever.
Right.
But it's not going to be, especially when you're painting somebody's pet. Pets do really have individual characteristics.
Yes.
Like Sparky may have a wonky tooth where it kind of pokes out over his lip, but without a photo reference, I don't know that.
Yeah.
So you
would create like a textbook, whatever, Chihuahua,
whatever I think a golden retriever looks like, or that I've seen before in my life, but it's
in the process of that. If it's not photo related in front of you, you're creating more of a memory. Right. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we were talking about. Yeah. Like your recall is more memory based off of probably in most cases, a picture or an in-person, visual that you've seen or whatever. And then you turn back around and you recreate off of memory, but you can't close your eyes and envision
see a picture.
the details or the
No, and how nice would it be to be able to
and-
do that?
Yeah.
I think, man, I think that would really help me out a lot. But I also like the fact that I can close my eyes and shut off the world. I don't have a whole lot go. It sounds terrible to say. I don't have a whole lot going on up there when my eyes are closed.
We referenced it in pre-show as being like, it's almost like a whiteboard for you. Like nothing really is there. You can create an image, but it's not something that is then, it's only memory based that gets created. Like, yes, I remember painting this particular deal, but you wouldn't be able to close your eyes and recall, details and recreate that in your mind. No. You would just you could sit there and go, I know that I created this style by this, I use these brushes, I use this color, that part you could remember. But as far as specifically being able to close your eyes and visualize what you commissioned for a customer or whatever. Yeah, no that's idea. So crazy.
It's that old saying, out of sight, out of mind? Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And,
that's a real life statement.
That's a real life statement for me. If I don't see it and it's not in front of me, it's not something I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And so I think what's more amazing about that process is we were talking about kind of comparing it like a sponge. Like, you can go through this process of building this painting, right? Like you're sucking in the details, whether that's from picture, description by your client, whatever that looks like, right? Like let's say there's not something there and they're visually telling you things. They're trying to describe it, which you obviously need, right?
I get this question a lot when people commission me for a portrait. The one of the things that some people will ask is, do you need a photo? And that was crazy to me before I knew I had aphantasia. I was like, well, yeah, I mean,
like who doesn't use a photo? Yeah. Like yeah.
Did they think they were going to describe what their dog looked like? And then I was going to go off that because, it was very confusing. I thought that was kind of a very obvious question or answer was, of course I need a photo to look at so I know what your dog looks like.
Well, and then going back and looking at some of your artwork that you've been commissioned to do or pieces that you've done on your own or whatever, makes so much more sense to see the abstract vantage that you put into some of these things, where it's almost like now knowing that after researching this condition and how it works or whatever, it's almost like going back and knowing that, going, okay, these she probably didn't have a picture of, and this she did have. So the more realistic your paintings looked, the more credible it is that you probably had a picture of animal, person, whatever in front of you to be able to reference. And then the more abstract the painting, you're now working on
from my mind's non-existent eye.
Or what the client has told you, right?
Sure.
Like, you're talking about a house that you painted, and here's a picture of the house. The house is given to you. It's not in great condition, but then the client says, this is what it used to look like. It had these colors. It had these bushes. It had, and so you can recreate the structure, the bones, like you had referenced, of the house. But then you're like, okay, pink flower bushes and, this kind of thing.
I can add details that maybe aren't in the photograph.
Right.
But I need you to describe in detail what they were.
Right.
Was it a pink azalea bush out front? And then I need to go onto Google
look
and find out what a pink azalea bush looks like, because I don't know. I have no frame of reference for what that would look like. And then I can add it to the painting. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it looks exactly how it did. And it's in all its glory, in its former glory.
And the more we talked about this, where you're like, I know what an apple looks like, right? Like I was thinking, like in terms of, I think even that I was telling you the video that I was watching that was describing this is like, yes, I know what an apple looks like, but if you're asking me to close my eyes, envision this apple with a light coming from the left side that has a bite out of the right side of it, that is placed in in a bowl of fruit.
Man, I can imagine it, but I can't see it. And that is the hard, I don't even want to get into how hard that is to explain, to be able to imagine something and not see it.
Yes.
Because to most people, those things are synonymous.
Yes.
Imagination is seeing.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what an apple in a bowl with a bite taken out of it, with the light shining down on the left-hand side would
Right.
look like, but I have no visual representation in my mind's eye of it.
On a memory.
Yeah.
Basically, and you can put these things together based on a memory.
On a memory.
But in order for you to recreate it in your mind, that's not
It's not going to happen.
possible.
Not possible.
Yeah.
So that enables me to create lots of different styles of art.
Yes.
I think the most important thing to me when creating art is I like, especially for dogs and when I paint portraits of people, I like them to look obviously as close to the actual person or dog as possible.
Right.
However, I don't want it to be so photorealistic that it looks like the photo.
Yeah.
It needs to obviously be a piece of artwork. And that's not hard for me to do. I mean, it's a painting. So unless you're like one of those people that does where you can't even tell the difference between the photo and the painting, I think it's, I don't remember what it's called, photorealism or something like that. You're going to be able to tell it's a piece of artwork, and so that's important.
Well, so a piece of art that you were commissioned to do recently, you took two photographs, merged them together, but you merged them together in an abstract design.
I love doing that because it leaves
Intentionally, right?
Intentional. She asked me to do it in an abstract way, which I love because it gives me a lot more free reign, creative control of the outcome of the painting. And so, as long as we're under the explicit understanding that they want it to look abstract, I need for them to know that it's not going to look exactly like the painting. This is my interpretation.
Let me make sure you know what abstract is before
painting.
you walk out of here.
Yeah. So she gave me two photos of her and her husband on their wedding night in Vegas, and one was of him kind of dipping her down into a kiss, and then one was of them standing under some cool neon lights of the chapel they got married, and she wanted to merge the two paintings. And so I have a lot of fun with those because it leaves it up to my interpretation.
Well, and there's a lot of creativity that's going on with that anyway, but at the idea of it, again, we're talking in that same boat of like, I can see these two, let me close my eyes and envision these pieces together is not how that works, right? You're going, okay, I'm going to take the structure of this, I'm going to take the parts of this, but again, if you can see it as a visual in front of you, you can recreate that how you choose.
I did 3 drafts of that painting.
Yeah,
I had to.
I mean, the painting's awesome. I mean, even in abstract format, it's awesome. I mean, because initially when I looked at it, I had to go back and look at the 2 photos because I was like, I saw the 2 photos and I saw your picture, and I clicked on the canvas print or the canvas painting, and then I went, wait a minute. Is this both of the photos combined? Like, I didn't realize it at first looking at it. I saw the couple, which is your focal point in one of the photos. And then I'm sitting there looking at it going, oh, wait a minute. Let me go back and look at that again. Then I went, oh, I see what you did. You took this part from this one. You took this from here, and you made this all one piece.
Yeah.
Which, again, was a cool piece to be able to look at. But where do you feel like, well, before we get off into the specializations of the things that you feel like you do well or that you do more of than anything else, let's talk about where Beth Symons Fine Art starts kind of hitting the ground running here. Okay. So 2014, I think, was kind of the date that I threw out to you. Like, you kind of realize, like, this is something for me. Like, I know that this is something that I can do.
Yeah, I was painting. I was really on Pinterest a lot, kind of looking at examples of things to paint because I couldn't just conjure up images. I could do still lifes from my home, but like there's not really a whole lot of fun stuff to paint that's just sitting in my house.
Right.
So I was looking for examples and kind of trying to replicate there just as a learning process for me. And was posting my paintings on Facebook, and people were really enjoying it. And I had a friend who lives in Belleville. She said, "Can you paint my dog?" And I was like, "Oh,
I can try."
Yes, sure. And so I did it. I painted. It was the first dog I ever painted. Had never even attempted to before. And it was a Boston Terrier, an older Boston Terrier. And I thought the painting turned out amazing, and she thought it turned out amazing. And then
this is the black and white Boston Terrier?
Black, yeah, it was from 2014. I look at it now and I'm like,
I don't know how many Boston Terriers you painted.
I've painted a lot of Boston Terriers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so this was the first one. It was kind of a close-up and very cartoony looking almost. It was a very cartoon version of. She loved it. I was really proud of it at the time.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. And then and my mind told me, hey, that was a fluke. I'm never going to be able to do that again. So after that, I refused to paint pet portraits. I was like, nope, done it once, tried it. It looked great. I'm not going to mess with it.
I'm going out on a high note.
We're not doing that again. And so people asked. I had a lot of requests for pet portraits that I turned them down.
Wow.
I said, I'm not doing it. I didn't want to give myself the opportunity to fail at one.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it would just be like an I told you so moment. Like, we knew you couldn't really paint pet portraits, and now you've proved to yourself. You just got lucky. You got lucky. Yeah. You did a good one. Let's stop while we're ahead. Don't do any more, because if you fail at it, it's just going to be like, yeah, well, we suck at it. So I didn't.
You can sit over there and sell the idea. It's a one of a kind.
It's a one of a kind.
It's going to be way more expensive in the long run.
So I did it for a really long time, probably until about 2017. So three years I refused to paint pet portraits. Oh. And then somebody asked me again, and it may have been a moment where I just really needed the money.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, crap.
Okay. Fine. I've turned down 100 of these. I guess I'll do yours.
And that one turned out better. And it was like, oh, wait a second. Maybe I can paint pet portraits. Maybe I can do this. And so I started taking pet portrait commissions, and they got better and better and better and better. And so I was able to kind of quell that fear in me that said, you can't do pet portraits, and it turned it into, you actually can do pet portraits, and you can make a living doing it too.
So in the process of doing this, between that 2014, 2018 timeframe, you're still working a full-time job, this kind of hobby at this point. You're working on the side. It's making a little money for you, but it's really, you're not diving off into it.
Correct. I don't remember what jobs I was working. I was kind of flitting between jobs. I was staging at a real estate company, and I was working as a content writer for a website design firm, doing some copywriting for them, and I was shooting photography for concerts, that kind of thing, and just kind of wherever I could find a job that allowed me to express myself creatively. That's really what I was looking to do. I'm not a desk 9-to-5 job kind of person. Right. I just need
like, this job pays the bills. This is really what I enjoy doing, though. Yeah. You know, so you go through the process. I'm sure your feedback that you're getting, though, is still like pushing and leaning you into like, this can be a career for you, right? Yeah. Like, I'm imagining that based on what I've seen, even some of your older stuff, because I thought that was very interesting where you took, you took a picture of two pairs and you put them next to each other, and you're like, this was 2014 and this is
2021. I believe that was painted earlier this year.
Yeah. And you're like, I've changed a little bit.
A little bit better.
Yeah. And I mean, again, the photorealism of the one that you're doing here is, again, years of experience continuing to kind of hone your skill.
Yeah.
Your love is in watercolor?
My love is in watercolor. I still love doing abstract acrylics, and I still do large. I've got 2 commissions out for some huge acrylic pieces that are going in an Airbnb right now, and I love doing that. But there's just something about the ethereal quality and the translucent quality of watercolor that I find so beautiful. The softness of it, I'm really attracted to.
And so I'm not an artist, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express one time. So there is a level, though, of inconsistency with watercolor, right? Like, you can put a stroke down on a medium, whatever that is. I mean, let's say let's just go with paper, to start with.
I already know where you're going with this, and I can tell you, if you don't mind me interjecting. Watercolor is it's a really hard to control medium. It kind of has a mind of its own because it's done with water.
Yes.
And water is hard to control, especially on a flat surface where it can kind of go where it pleases.
Right.
And so that's one of the things I liked about it, but you really have to lean into that and release control. So many other mediums, you're using a brush and you are telling that paint exactly where to go.
Right.
Exactly where to go.
Or your brush is controlling.
There's a lot of control.
Yeah, it's controlling thickness. It's controlling the amount of paint that you're putting on there. You can really kind of fine tune that, like if you're using acrylics or oils or things like that. But in watercolor kind of tells you to a certain extent, like, you know, I felt like I had enough on my brush at this point, but in this one I got a much lighter version of that stroke.
Yeah.
So, but I can go over it twice, or I can shadow this out by pulling in a different color to go over the top of that, and it just kind of becomes the paper.
The beautiful thing about watercolor, there are several things. First, there's the relinquishing of control. And that was hard for me because I like to be in control. I like to tell, especially with art, I like to tell it where to go.
Right.
It's my vision. You don't tell me, I tell you.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of watercolor is relinquishing the control in the beginning and watching in that moment what the paint decides to do, what the water decides to do, and allowing it to have that natural, organic shape and form and beauty that it's creating and you're not.
Right.
So very, very pretty. The learning and growing process is going from relinquishing control, allowing control of the watercolor within itself, to how do I respect the watercolor as it is and gain control to make what I need to or want to.
Yeah. You start learning in the different platforms that you're painting on, whether that's canvas or you know, if that's paper or whatever, you start learning a little bit as to, not necessarily knowing, I know exactly where this is going to go, but I know that if I pull this medium in, that I can get a certain look here. I'm not going to have the real hard structured lines that I'll get out of acrylic or out of oil.
You can create those. It's just it's a fine tuning process. With watercolor, you're building up from the background up. It is a multi-layering process. Where with most mediums, you work dark to light.
Yeah.
Right. So you put your dark shapes down first, and then once that's dried, or even when it's not dried, you can add highlights on top of that. Because of the translucency of watercolor, you have to start with the lightness back and build up the shadow, which is such a learning process, especially if you've never worked with watercolor before and you're used to doing the opposite.
Yeah.
You have to understand that in order to build shadows, you can't go in right away with the light. You have to leave space for the light.
How many times are you building, you're building something and you get a result out of watercolor by building up that base, going over multiple times, or adding different colored layers on there, and you get something out of it that you weren't even anticipating?
Oh, that's such a cool thing when that happens. I think the first time I remember that happening is when I was doing, I think it was the Bernie Sanders one, actually. And he had a shiny forehead, which is, when it's shiny, it's white on skin tone.
Right.
And so building up from the bottom, I knew that in that particular spot on his forehead, I had to leave that tiny little spot white, or at least a lighter shade than the rest of his skin, for it to translate into the shiny spot on his head. And so I went in very lightly with my skin tone paint and just did a very light wash. And light washing is more water than paint. So your ratios are different. When you have more water, less paint, it's going to be much more see-through, much more translucent, and a lighter color. Your value is going to be lighter. And so I had to leave that little area very light and then build up around to create the layers of darker skin where it would shadow around his forehead or on the corner, the side of his face where the light maybe wasn't hitting.
Right. Well, so this design, if y'all haven't seen it and you want to go to the, is it on your website?
Yeah, I think
I know it's on your Facebook page.
It's not on the website yet. There are plans for Bernie. Yeah. Future plans for Bernie on the website. But for now, you can see a painting of
on your Facebook page.
Bernie
you have
Mittens.
it. Yeah, you have it on there, and you're telling me like you painted this thing in like 15 minutes.
Oh man, it was such a quick paint.
Which was like, I'm looking at this thing like it was incredible because it had a lot of detail in it for being watercolor. It still had a lot of detail in it, especially in the facial features, and there's again, It was, we talked about, hitting when the iron was hot, right? Like this was a meme. It literally came out. And
everybody was talking about, there were so many memes about Bernie, and I thought, well, heck, I'll paint it. Why not paint it?
You initially painted it not with the idea of calling it something or not, using it
for
as,
anything, just to have it out there, just because it was a funny, kind of like a keepsake for the times that we're in with the election and the inauguration. And I just wanted, I wanted to do it and have it just to remember. You
literally turned this watercolor painting into a watercolored meme. I mean,
did.
He's holding a rose, right?
Yes, and the caption says, "I burn with desire for you." And we turned it into a Valentine's Day card, which was hilarious. But
and then this thing grew feet and took off. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden you got people reaching back to you. Now all of a sudden you realize, like, okay, it took me 15 minutes, but I don't want to paint, 35 of these things.
It took me 15 minutes because it took me 7 years to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and so people are like, that took you 15 minutes? I was like, well, it actually took me seven years to learn. I can do it quickly because I know how to do it.
Right.
If I had just walked in blindly and said, I've never painted before, but I'm going to paint Bernie Sanders.
Well, it's just like anything. In building your knowledge and your skill set, you start learning quick ways to establish skin colors, to establish curvatures and things like that you can, I know if I'm painting a face, this is the easiest way for me to start that. Kind of like what you were saying. I'm going to start light and I'm going to work my way to dark. And so, this was kind of virally, I think, when you started, when a lot of your stuff started hitting my page, that was one of the first ones. And I was like, well, that's very creative, and so, but again, I thought the same thing. I was like,
listen, I didn't paint that rose either. I totally went into Photoshop and added the roses. Well, okay. I didn't want to mess with the original painting. Yeah. Because I wanted to keep it exactly how it was so that I could go in and add After Effects later, depending on the season.
I mean, listen, if you were on social media, you had this thing every day showing up as a different meme on your feed.
So sorry.
And so when I saw your deal show up, I was like, well, that's different. Like the first thing you kind of do think is when you're looking at it, was like, was this created with Photoshop?
Well, I had some Easter bunny ears on him at one point, and I think the caption was because his arms are crossed and he's looking very miserly. It's like Happy Easter, I guess.
Yeah,
or, how to bring all sorts of fun things.
It was fun to see it come together and fun to see it kind of grow the legs and people start asking about it and how they could get a hold of it. And again, the uniqueness of something that, while it was very, it was very cultural satire at that point, comes into the market in a different format of something that you hadn't seen. All you had seen was people doing a picture, chopping them out, and, putting them in whatever photo.
Which was hilarious. Yeah. Hilarious. But I thought, if I can do a watercolor painting of him and then do those things after, that's a whole different medium.
Well, and as a business, this will sound completely stupid, and I'm going to tell you that I did it, but I didn't do it. I actually took that, photoshopped him out of the photo, and I was like, how could I use this in the business to put something out?
Did you do it?
I didn't.
Oh, man.
I think he's still on my desktop, though. Like, there's still a PNG of him on my desktop of where I cut him out and everything else, and I was like, this would be kind of funny. And I think I might have placed him
Lowell, your moment's passed.
I know.
Sorry, buddy.
I think I placed him on something somewhere. Oh, I did. I had a friend that I put it on something and then put it onto their page.
There you go.
I don't even remember what it was, but it was something just kind of very ridiculous and put it on their page, and we didn't end up using it for the business aspect of it. But in your world, this became something, again, that was like, you were really just kind of doing it for fun, and then it turned into something. And so we talked about, like, when you're doing those kind of pieces, well, like you said, you don't want to sit down and have to recreate 35, and you can't recreate them all the same way to make them look identical.
No, I actually had somebody reach out and wanted me to do, I ended up painting Rudy Giuliani as well, and then I also did a Ted Cruz one too, right after that debacle.
The Ted Fled deal or something.
Ted Fled, yeah. He was on a lounge chair on the beach in Mexico with his Hawaiian print shirt on and a beer in his hand. Actually, I think he was drinking a Lone Star.
In my research, not that I looked this close, but I'm pretty sure there was a Canadian flag on the beer.
No, man, that was a Lone Star beer. He was drinking a Texas beer.
All right.
I don't know. Canadian flag could have been funny too, though.
I mean, so when you get into this deal and you're doing these types of things, and there is that type of a viral call to action for it. So you've now got to commission somebody on your side to like recreate these things for you, so that you have sellable pieces that you can sell to the community or to the
I've got a printer
clients.
actually in San Antonio that I use
Nice.
that does. I'm extremely picky about the quality of prints that I use.
Yeah.
I want there to be almost no, you can't distinguish between the original and the print. And I've found somebody that does that really well. So.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, it was a great, like I said, at the moment, hitting when the iron was hot. And it was definitely something that turned into something quick for you that I don't even, like I said, it didn't start with the anticipation of it turning into anything.
Not at all. No, it just kind of blossomed on its own, that one.
Yeah. So we got sidetracked here. So let's flip back to your business. And so 2018, you're doing it kind of part-time and walk me through when you get to the point of going like, this is something I can do. I'm at the point now that I can make a living.
I think it was when I lost my full-time job back at the end of January of 2020. And I had been tossing around and toying with the idea of going full-time with my painting business. But as always, like taking that leap, taking that step into it is just terrifying.
Sure.
Because you're going from, a paycheck every 2 weeks that's paying all the bills every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Paying the bills into like, okay, now I'm solely relying on if I'm getting work or not, and
you got to get to the point of the sell, not just somebody commissions you and gets it all started, but you got to work it all the way through the process.
Yeah. So I made the decision at the end of January that I was going to go full time with my art, and did it for about a month and a half. Before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And made kind of a big to-do about the announcement of, hey, I'm doing this full time now. Send me business. And people did.
A lot of your friends already knew you were doing this on the side. Yeah. You were already getting pieces that were already out there in the process of all of that. So really that would have meant the Bernie Sanders one was that right at the moment, or was that just a little bit before the moment where you decided to go, I'm taking this full time?
Oh no, the Bernie Sanders was...
Oh no, that was this year.
It was this year. It was the beginning of this. No, it's okay.
I'm already trying to get way down the road
both
here.
Januaries. Both were in January.
Yeah. No, I got you. So you start deciding that this is what you're going to do full time. You start taking on commission pieces that again, I got to pay my bills. I've got stuff that's got to happen here. And now it's become real, right? Like at this point, like I'm going to take a leap of faith here and we're going to see how this goes. Yeah. And so as you're creating these pieces, you're now come online. You've now decided, okay, this is going to now be Beth Symons Fine Art.
I was working. I had the name of my business was Brush and Blossom, and I knew that I wanted to rebrand that. Yeah. And I also knew that I wanted to change the name to be associated with who I am.
Sure. That's what all great artists do.
I guess so, yeah. So I changed it from Brush and Blossom, which I had for a few years and really loved, and it was good for the time that I was in, but I knew it was time to be me and put my work out there as me and not as another entity.
Yeah. So. And I mean, you wanted people, I could understand on your side, you'd want to be in the vein of having people sitting there saying, this is Beth Symons piece. Yep. Not a Brush Blossom.
I had a cool experience last weekend that I've been thinking about a lot because it was just such a weird moment as I was at a big birthday party. And when I say big, it was outdoors, but there were quite a few people there and a lot of people that I didn't know. And so introductions were being made. And it was a gentleman here in town who's very affluent. And a lot of people know him and respect him. I'd never met him before in person. But when he shook my hand and I said, Beth Symons, he go, oh, Beth Symons, the artist, right? And I was like, oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it. It was really, I was
I have
arrived. He knew who I was. And that was such a cool and humbling feeling to just know that you have created a name for yourself and your community.
Well, and that's a great segue piece into, we were talking about the advertising part. I asked in pre-show, what is it that you do to get your pieces out there? And your comment to that was Nothing. Like, you know, I pretty much do it. I put it out there. I may take a picture of it and put it on a social media page or something along those lines, but really it's all generated organically on the backside by your customers, the ones who commissioned you to do these pieces.
Yeah. I went in, so I do, and we're not going to talk too much about this, but I went into a home to do a walkthrough for a design project because I also do interior design as well. And with my friend Shelby. And so we were meeting at some client's house who we'd never met before. They were strangers to us, but they had contacted us and wanted some design work done, some remodel work done in their home. And so I got there before Shelby did, and I'm chit-chatting with this couple in their home, and I turn around and there's one of my paintings on their wall. And I was like, yeah, it was really cool. And I was like, you know what, I painted this. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's you. And I was like, yeah, Beth Symons. And I, you know, showed her the where I signed it on the painting, and that was
like somebody stole this out of a car
so
several years ago.
to walk into somebody's house that I never even known and see my work on their wall. Just again, and like, man, it's just cool. And even if that didn't happen, even if I wasn't recognizable, I feel good knowing that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I'm putting out into the world what's inside of me, and that's therapeutic.
Well, you know, a quick little story. When I was with Hobby Lobby, we got to go to the corporate office and we got to talk to the lady who creates about 90% of the home accent design pieces that you see when you walk into Home Accents. And she's got this huge room that she builds these pieces and finds art, and she paints some art. She puts the stuff together. She puts, you know, a lot of she picks her own frame, her own matting, everything else. And then once it's to the point that it's at, then she sends it out and has it replicated exactly as she's designed it, and then it's shipped into the stores, right? And my question to her in hearing how this stuff is created and how she was doing it is, I'm like, what does it feel like to know, like, there are millions of households that have your pieces in them? I mean, because that really is what's happening is she's creating this thing from scratch.
Yeah.
It goes in, it's basically put into the store. It's, you know, they have companies that recreate these exactly. And she says, these are the pieces, this is the frame, this is the mat. And then all of a sudden this thing ends up in somebody's home. And she's like, it's actually kind of weird a little bit. Like, I've walked into homes where I know I've done some of the stuff that's hanging in there. But to see it, there's also this level of pride where I'm sitting there going, before that existed, it didn't. And I brought it to life.
That's such a cool feeling. I don't know that I want to be in millions of homes. I mean, I guess that'd be cool. I don't want to be like, I'm not an elitist. Yeah. Like, I'm not too good to be. You don't want to be
commercialized.
I don't want to be too commercialized. Right. Yeah. I want my work to hold, not that hers doesn't hold value, because it certainly does, but maybe.
But if you're making thousands and thousands of pieces, yeah, as pieces go up, value comes down.
Exactly.
I mean, ultimately, there is value. There is, I should say, rising value in less supply.
Exactly.
You know, more demand, less supply. You know, all of a sudden, you're getting paid a lot more for what it is that you're doing.
I think that's also why I tend to hold on to a lot of my originals. Just hoping, but I do make limited number of prints available, so they will be signed by me. The prints will be signed and numbered by me, so that they're out there. They're available to people. But I have the original, not for selfish reasons, other than, you know what, if the value does go up, then I have a more valuable original product.
You're going to be like Prince releasing, you know, thousands and thousands of unreleased titles.
But also, I guess maybe the more you sell the more prints you sell, the more the value of the original goes up.
That's right. We just keep you off of university. We don't have to worry about having these things come to light anytime soon.
Keep me away from cars in general. I don't have any more bones to break.
So services, you know, you kind of range the gambit when we talked about doing things that are in realism state and things that are abstract.
Both, yes.
What do you find yourself doing the most of? Is it portrait? Is it pet? Is it
I find myself doing the most home and pets. Mostly pets. A lot of people, just because it's a good bereavement gift, or if somebody just really, and most people really adore their pets. They really adore their
kids.
Dog. Yeah, they're like our kids. So I find that most of the dog portraits I do are gifts to somebody else. So I'm kind of in the gift giving business, I guess. But And I love doing that. And especially it's gotten me this far. Eventually, at some point down the road, not anytime soon, I will probably take fewer and fewer commissions.
Yeah.
So, and
which we'll talk about that at the end of what the plan is for the future here for you. So,
but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So,
you never know. You never know. So,
maybe after this.
Process, I thought, was something that was very interesting. I heard you on another podcast talking about your process, and like, I think what most people perceive that an artist does is like once they get started, it's like from start to finish. Like you're not going and doing anything else. It's like, okay, I'm done for the day, and tomorrow I'll pick the brush up again and I'll go back to this and I'll start back where I left off. And that's not how the process works for you. So I'd like you to kind of speak to the process a little bit about, somebody comes in, they've talked to you about what it is that they want. They've commissioned you for a piece that they want you to do. I know turnaround time is going to change based on complexity and size and things along those lines.
Turnaround times based, I tell people 3 to 4 weeks. That's the general turnaround time. That turnaround time is based on the hopes that I'm going to feel like painting.
Right. And which leads me to the point in that podcast, you made the comment about painting in spurts, where it's almost driven by feel. Right.
It's 100% driven by feel.
And so your goal is that you have a certain mindset that you want to be in the process of painting this particular piece. Yeah. And you feel like if I'm in this mindset, then I will give the best that I can possibly give to this person who's commissioned me and trusted me with this piece.
Yeah. And that's really hard to explain to people because I think a lot of people assume that because I'm an artist that I can just automatically sit down and create.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works for me personally, is that it is such an emotional outpouring or expression for me that it doesn't always come naturally and easily.
Well, and again, we were talking about your painting, while it is helping pay the bills and is full time for you and everything else, it is also therapy for you.
Totally therapy, art therapy.
And so as you're going through this part, you kind of know your mind and your body is really telling you like, hey, let's step away from this for a little bit. Let's get recentered, refocused. Let's,
100%. Yeah. I have tried to force myself to paint before, and I don't do anything differently with the paintbrush in my hand than I would any other time. The process of it is the same as far as putting paintbrush to paper. The outcome and the quality of the work is totally different. I've got 4 pieces sitting on my desk right now that I painted when I wasn't really feeling like painting. And they weren't commissions, they weren't for anybody, but just for me to kind of stay in the painting, to try to force myself back into feeling like it again. Where here I'm going to force myself to paint, even though I don't feel like painting and I don't have, it's not for anybody. It's kind of junk.
Well, and it's uninspired, really.
It's uninspired.
Yeah. So
that's exactly what it is. There's nothing driving. There's no emotion in it. It's just not the same.
Yeah. So we were talking about in the mindset of artists, and again, most people, again, like you said, are going to make an assumption that it's just going to be the start to finish. And if you tell them 3 to 4 weeks, they're going to go, okay, they don't view up and down time as a part of that. They only see linear time.
Right. Because I'm not going to tell my client, hey, there's a good chance I'm probably going to be feeling pretty anxious and depressed next week. And so I probably won't do any painting on your work.
Right.
That's just not a conversation that you have during the commission process.
Yeah. So. Nor your number 3 or 4 that I'm currently working on at the same time, where I'm spending time in between these. Do you find that when you commission pieces, including the ones that you're doing for yourself, do you find that mindset determines which piece you're going to?
Yeah, it does. Probably I shy away from doing the more difficult ones. And I think,
I need to be in a really good mood for these.
This one will be super easy, and I know that I can do it no matter how I feel, and it's going to be good. So I use that kind of as a catalyst to get going back into where I know I have a really difficult, whether I've got one coming up that's a portrait of a little girl eating a watermelon. I know that one's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard. So I'm going to do some of the easier ones first and build up to that more difficult painting.
Yeah, I mean, you want your emotional state to be reflected in the finalized piece. You got it. Right? And so when you're in we'll touch on this here briefly. You talked about anxiety and depression. These are two pieces that really manipulate a huge percentage of the population, right? For some people, it's one or the other. In other cases, it's a combination of both. They both kind of live in the same world with each other. And so for you, this is something that you've dealt with and struggled with for a while in your life. When we talk about therapy and art, this is really kind of, you can see like, there's not this, because I'm feeling anxious and depressed, let me just shut this all off and I'm not going to do it. Do you use your art pieces as almost like a timeline, I guess, to that? Like, hey, listen, I'm not really feeling real happy and I'm not in a good place initially today. And I'm not going to spend that time on this person who's commissioning me to do their happy little girl eating a piece of watermelon. So I'm going to go to my piece that I have over here that is really documenting this timeline of how I was feeling during these certain periods. What was going on in my life? Was it loss? Was it tragedy? Was there just something that just didn't settle well with me? And these are almost like frozen pieces in your timeline of where depression and anxiety resides in your timeline.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to kind of lay out, if I could, lay out all of my paintings in chronological order.
Yeah.
And look at from the first to the last, and that would probably be close to 1,000 of them. So it would be a really long line.
Yeah.
But I bet you anything, I could look at them and tell you exactly.
Yeah, you could see the curves.
I was emotionally.
Interesting.
Which is it's cool, I guess, but it makes a big difference to be feeling emotionally healthy and in a good state of mind. The quality of work is better than if I'm feeling down or sad, or I am, grieving. There's something to be said for creating in grief. And I know we talked about this in pre-production, that I did a series on grief after a friend was killed in a motorcycle accident in October. And I decided that I was going to paint the feelings of grief instead of just hold them in, which was it was just such a tough time to go through. And so looking at those paintings, you kind of see the juxtaposition of the beauty that you experience through grief in the remembering of the person that you're grieving, and the memories that you have together, the experiences you had together, the times that you spent with one another. And so there's beauty in that. And in the same token, then there's this almost like the dropping out of, okay, but now he's gone.
Yeah.
And I never get to see him again. I never get to hear his voice. I never get to have a domino night with him. I never get to go dancing in Houston or trip in a mud puddle and see him reach down to help me up and all these things. So there's this darkness and this lightness that are all combined in the painting. And it's just an expression of kind of what the inside of my brain looks like.
Well, and you allow yourself to be a conduit to those feelings. I think some people would assume that painting for some people, and when we use the word therapeutic, is maybe the idea of like, I can get those things out of my mind and just be focused right here in this moment, and the other stuff kind of drowns and goes away. Whereas you use that more of a conduit to come in through you, out onto
show you
the
what
piece.
It looks like.
Yeah, out onto the piece, and to say, listen, during this time, I knew I was battling with this, or this was a really big struggle for me to kind of get my brain around. And here's a piece that I painted during that time frame that is like a snapshot of what the reality in my head was.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I don't expect that grief will go away. I know that it softens over time, but to be able to, like you said, have a snapshot of what was kind of going on in my brain or how I was feeling in that time. It's almost like I take it and then just put it on paper and then I have it.
Yeah, as an artist, I would, if I'm outside in titling what you described to me in pre-production, is I would title it as a visual diary, you know, as opposed to where most people, when they get in those modes, they open a diary and they put their words down on paper and everything else, and they come back and revisit that.
So each of the paintings in my grief series is titled with the memory that's attached to it.
Interesting.
So one of them, I can remember being out on a job site with him. And this was after we weren't working together, but he had called me to come out on a job site, and it just rained. And of course it was construction area. So there was mud, and he was walking in front of me and I was behind him, and I stepped in the mud, and I don't know what happened, but I fell down into the splits actually in the mud, and he just kept walking, and he said he turned around and it was expecting to see me in his line of sight. And then he couldn't figure out where I'd gone until he looked down, and I was sitting in the splits in this muddle. And then, you know, he got a good solid 2-minute laugh in before he extended his hand and then hosed me off. So that's just one of my favorite memories of him. It's such a silly memory, and it's not a big, huge, funny thing that anybody else really finds as humorous as I do. But it was a moment between us that was really special and that I think about often. And so to have that in a painting and then titled Mud Puddle was
So here's a great
sweet.
question that I didn't say I was going to ask you when
dang.
we were talking about this. Do you find that most of those paintings, when you're in those moments of anxiety and depression, are more abstract, or are they more
Totally
realism?
abstract?
Yeah.
No, because they're from my memory, and I don't have a photo of me down in the splits in a mud puddle and if I did, if somebody had happened to be there and had their phone out and took a picture of that moment of me sitting in the splits in the mud puddle, I could totally recreate it very realistically because I had a photo reference.
I find it's interesting because then when you see artists talk about paintings that they've done, they're hanging in a gallery somewhere or something along those lines, and that, you know, the person who is looking at the piece gets an interpretation of like, oh, this could be this, or could, you know,
Sure.
and then the artist
It's up
comes
for
along.
interpretation.
Yeah. The artist comes along and kind of gives the backstory explanation behind how this happens, or what it is, or what inspired the piece. And then it's almost like this storyline comes into focus for the viewer, the person who's standing there admiring the piece or whatever. And there's more meaning and more understanding behind it. And you get a lot of that with some of the older artists that are in there, where you can see, you know, you talk about like Van Gogh and guys that did paintings, and they talk about this descent, you know, for those guys, there was guys that it was descent into madness.
Sure.
And their paintings reflect that descent, you know.
Well, I'm hoping not to paint any descent into madness.
Yeah.
We'll stick with the grief process,
Yeah.
because that's hard enough as it is. But yeah, and I also want the art to be enjoyable, whether you know the story or not.
Yeah.
And if you do know the story, that will change your perception of what you see, like you're talking about. So I want it to be what they want it to be. It can be their story of grief.
Well,
So they may be able to associate that painting with a moment that they've had in the grieving process too.
yeah, absolutely. And that painting for you represents both sides of the coin. It represents a funny moment, but also reflects a moment that won't be had again.
Exactly.
Right? So it lives on both sides of a coin, but being able to still get that interpretation both ways. Like you said, that can ring true for somebody who's lost somebody else, or it can ring true for somebody that's sitting there going, I've had some moments like that where I can totally relate to that.
There's
you know?
both in it, and I think that's the beauty of it, because it's reflected in the art as well, is that you have the darkness of it, but you also have the funny brightness of it too. And so when those two are married or joined into the painting, it just kind of creates an experience.
So commissioned work for you really kind of lays a boundary guideline as to what the client is looking for, what they're wanting to see out of the art. And I realize a lot of that's left up to interpretation. They've got an idea of what they want to see. I think a lot of the times, probably, I would imagine that creativity is then flipped into your court about how you want to produce that.
Sure, which is very nerve-wracking, because a lot of people have kind of a vision in their mind, and they can see the vision of what they're looking for. And unless they do a really detailed job of explaining that to me, and I need picture references, can you show me something similar to what you're looking for, so that I have a frame of reference for what you're wanting?
So a person who comes in, let's say they've got a dog that they've lost. This was a lifelong companion, been in their family 15 years. They show you a photo, and they go through this description about, you know, what kind of dog it was. You know, it was happy. It played all the time. It did all these kind of things. How do you then, or what do you feel that you bring to that in the back end as you're commissioning that work and doing the piece? How do you bring those personality traits that they talk about to life on canvas or on paper?
I don't know that it's necessarily something that I do on my end. During the commission process where we have the initial talk about what they're wanting, it's really, really important to me that I get a good photo.
Yeah.
That's number one, is I need a good photo. You would laugh so hard at some of the pictures of people's pets that they send me. You can't even tell what it is. It looks like a potato.
Nice. With eyes.
I don't know how to paint this. It doesn't look like a dog.
Yeah.
So and a lot of people, especially people that love their pets, and most people do, have tons of pictures of their pet. So I need as many good, clear, front-facing or side-facing, whichever you prefer, photographs of your pet, and then I can start to see the personality, especially if the pet's deceased and or it's a pet that I've never met and will never meet. To be able to know their personality. So, and a lot of people will send me a pretty long email about the characteristics and the personality, and he loved to do this, and can you be sure to include this, or he loved his orange ball. Was his favorite orange ball, and so I'll incorporate the orange ball in there. But just I'll tell you, the most important part of a pet portrait are the eyes. It's just where all the personality is. Yeah. So I always start with the eyes, which is backwards from how most people paint pet portraits. They usually start from the outside, face, body, and then move into the eyes. And I start the opposite because I know if I can get the eyes right, the rest will come.
Interesting.
So instead of spending all that time painting the rest of the dog, I do the eyes first in that way.
And the more pictures that are presented to you, you can then stitch together a visualized image of what the customer is asking for.
I usually just pick one photo and replicate that photo, but I can get a sense of their pet from the other photos.
Yeah, based on if they're playful, if they dogs will show you personality, all the time. And if you can capture that on film or whatever, cell phone, whatever that looks like, video even in some cases, probably makes your job easier to see some of those body reactions from the animal as well too, or body poses from the animal, in order to be able to give them something as realistic, or at least true to character.
I try.
Of what they're asking.
Yeah. It's sometimes, especially if the dog's deceased and they don't have a whole lot of photos, that's happened too. Man, I'm not a miracle worker.
I was going to say, that's got to be tough.
It's so tough because again, I don't have any photo reference to go from. I can't conjure up an image in my mind of what that might have looked like at some point. And so sometimes you're kind of going to get what you get. And I have in the past had just maybe one not great photo to work from, and I'll research the dog breed or other photos and see if I can just kind of get a general form or shape from those photos, and then add the characteristics of the dog to that.
So I had this other question, but I'm gonna change the wording on it, because initially the question that we had talked about was other artists that have impacted you or that you look up to. And let me back that word up, and let's say mentors, people who have carried value for you into this venture, people who are cheerleading you, they're pouring into you, they're building you up from the backside, even in some cases propping you up even when days are bad, right? Like who are those people, the value that they carry in who you've become and who you see yourself becoming in this role?
Golly, my sister's a big one. She's also a small business owner, and she's back in my hometown of Missouri, and she's opened a brick and mortar boutique. She started online, and we speak on the phone several times a week, usually FaceTime, and just check in with one another. And I see how she's doing, because she opened in November of 2019. her brick and mortar shop.
Older, younger?
She's my younger sister.
Okay.
There's a 5-year age difference
Okay.
between 4 and 5 years.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, so she's 5 years young, 4.5, 5 years younger than I am, and we have not always gotten along, especially when we were younger. I grew up, I guess, with a real sense of entitlement to her clothes.
Nice.
And we aren't the same size, so I would stretch hers out, and she would get mad, and I didn't care, and so like we fought a lot. But as we're older now, and she has kids, and I have Lila, and we can relate on a grown up level.
Yeah,
she's been a big cheerleader and a supporter of my work, and hopefully I am to hers as well. It stinks because I'm not there and she's not here, and so we're 800 miles apart. But we do the best we can over the phone. My mom is a supporter. She's just very, she's just proud mom. And my close friends have always just been encouraging. And then also I did find the women entrepreneurs group here.
Yeah, the we group.
The we group, yeah. And Brittany Lammert's and Marie. There was kind of a moment back in December of 2020, November, December of 2020, where I was like, I need help. I just can't do this anymore. And I was ready to throw in the towel. And I called an emergency meeting with them, and they kind of pulled me out and set me on my way and said, all right, we're not going to do this. Here's a plan moving forward. This is how we're going to get through this. And it was a game changer to have that kind of emotional support. I mean, they showed up at my house and we sat for 2 hours and came up with a game plan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the value in that alone, right? I mean, you can't put a dollar amount on that when you're talking about the mental health of how you're viewing things. And that there's always people that rise into the occasion. I can think of my worst moments with Walmart where I really wasn't sure I was going to make it. I mean, I found myself in an environment that I was not prepared for. Nor was I warned about. So It was kind of like, hey, congratulations, it's yours, now fix it. And and I remember a mentor that I had where he just happened to pick up the phone. I don't even know, the timing just happened to be perfect or whatever. And he picked up the phone. He's like, how you doing? I go, honestly, man, I don't know that I can do this. And then we walk through and I use it today. It's really crazy how a mentor will pour into you and then it becomes a part of your arsenal to help other people. Mm-hmm. But the comment that he had made is, what's the worst thing that can happen to you here? And I mean, really in this moment in my life, I'm unplugged at home. Even when I'm home, I'm not home. It is 24/7 business going on in my head. I wasn't sleeping well. When I go home, I'd have the TV on, but I couldn't tell you what was on the TV. You were sitting
zoned
there.
out.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, what's going on in my store right now that I'm not there? What am I going to walk into? This constant, I referred to it as, the best way I described it was an imminent, demise that was coming my way. That's what it felt like.
Imminent doom.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like it was going to be at my doorstep. I couldn't control it. I couldn't ward it off.
That's how I feel about the IRS.
It was one of these deals that I felt like if I took any days off, or even if I spent time with my family, that it didn't really matter. It was going to be that day. It'd be that moment or that time frame, and then the wrong person would show up, and I'd lose my job. And so
that's no way to live.
It was pretty bad. At its lowest point, it was pretty bad. And I tell people, I think on a previous podcast, it might even have been when I was talking to Brittany, I said at my highest moment where I made the most money in my career, I was the most miserable. Yeah. And there's a lot of truth behind more money, more problems, right? But at that same point, I didn't have a good fallback mentor or somebody that I could just lean into, because, again, I say kind of as men, we're kind of programmed just to suck it up, buttercup, and let's move on, right?
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's true.
And so it just so happened that, when he's walking me down this deal, it's like, well, let's deal with that. Like, let's talk about what that's going to look like. So if you lost your job tomorrow, what would happen? And we go through this deal, and it's probably a good hour-long conversation on the phone, and it basically, he walks me into this realization of like, okay, so if you lost your job tomorrow, what would you do? I'm like, well, I'd have to find another job. Okay, well, where are you going to go work? Well, I'm probably going to have to go work at another retailer since that's really what my background's at. It's like, okay, who's going to want a retail manager that's managed a $150 million supercenter? And I'm like, well, I would think just about anybody. He's like, so what are you worried about? Like, if all of these other places want that type of experience and your type of person that can take care of people and everything else, what are you worried about? Like, just, you're worrying about something that may never even come to fruition, but you're going to make it come to fruition by leaning in on it and worrying about it all the time. Like, you can make the monster real in the closet.
You absolutely can.
And so it takes somebody not in the fire with you to like pull you back out, dust you off, and go, listen, how'd that feel? Oh, I didn't feel real good.
Brittany's really good at doing that.
Oh, I know.
She's the best at it.
And she's not going to sugarcoat it with you.
Absolutely not. No, not at all. And I hate that and love it at the same time. But I feel so fortunate to have her be that kind of influence in my life where she can stop.
Yeah. Well, and rightfully so. I mean, she can speak from the same vein of depression because, I mean, she suffers from it as well, too. In that moment, again, I was on antidepressant medication. My comment from my wife is, I just want my husband back. And my wife could have cared less how much money was in the bank account at that moment. I think that's really where people lose their compass, right? They lose the direction that they're trying to head. In my world, I had tied in that, man, if I lose my job, my wife will leave me. Yeah. If I can't provide for my family, what will we do? We
Those
will be in the
thoughts
streets.
you tell yourself.
They're crazy. You will make the monster that's this big in the closet just turn into this huge pounding on the door.
That's the overthinking and anxiety for you.
Yeah, and it's a terrible place to live. And I refer to it as it's like a cassette tape that never turns off. It just the same thing just keeps repeating itself over and over. And when it's done, it rewinds and it starts again. And there's no downtime off of it. And I've known a lot of guys that have been in that boat, and I've known a lot of guys that put and I say guys because the women definitely they fall in these same categories. But they put their identity into what it is that they're building up. Like, I am this. Even when they introduce themselves to people, they don't introduce themselves as, I'm an incredible husband. I'm a great dad. I'm an awesome mom. They introduce themselves as owner of this, manager of this, a title that goes along with it. And then that title is the identity, and the rest of it suffers at the title. It's like, listen, if I give this up, then I'm no longer these things. If I don't have a job and I'm not providing for my family, well, how can I be a great spouse? How can I be a good dad? If we lost our house or had to move somewhere else.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive.
And they don't live well with each other inside somebody's brain either. And, and then a lot of people just, if they've never gone through that process, if they've never felt it, if they never know what it looks like, then they sit in this world of like, the suck it up buttercup is an easier place for them to live. Or like you were saying earlier, I got to pull myself up by the bootstraps and, I've got other people that I'm responsible for. And it was in that moment of the conversation of that mentor reaching back to me, walking me through the process and talking the monster out of the closet, and then us realizing this thing isn't nearly as big as it is, and it really probably doesn't even need to be living in there rent-free.
It's like a little annoying gnat that you just swat around.
It really is, and when you see it, you're like, man, I've been wasting all my energy on this. And then it was almost like just, it's like taking the handcuffs off, and you're living, you think you're living in this world with no safety net. But then you realize the net's always been there. You just didn't realize who was holding the net.
I can't even tell you the number of times where I just thought, oh God, this is it. This is it. I'm done for. And that's never happened in 36 and a half years of being alive. I've never not come out of that feeling of this is it. I'm done. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Is I die. That's the worst that can happen, and I'm still here. So
a funny well, it's not a funny post, but it's a really true statement. Is somebody put something up on Facebook today that the comment said, "You've survived 100% of your worst things that's happened in your life." You know, and
100%.
and you're just like, when you can step back,
You're
and
10
really,
for 10, baby.
when you can step back and look at it with, again, a different perspective than being in the fire. When you have mentors and friends and people who are invested in you, that they want to see the best out of you as well too. It may not necessarily mean that you got to show up to the party and you got to be the best possible person for the job, because nobody's really well prepared for it. You just have to be sometimes just the voice of reason. Yeah. Sometimes a different perspective.
You know, I can point back to one very critical moment. I was working at a title company here in town, and I was working with a lady named Cheryl, and her husband is a very prominent business owner here in town. He owns a really large company here in town, and she didn't need to work, but she was just kind of one of those people that wanted to.
Yeah.
And so she enjoyed the work, and we got to know each other really well and became very close friends. And she's probably 20, 30 years older than I am, at least old enough to be my mom. And we went out to dinner one night, and I had talked to her a lot. This is long before I started working for myself, and she knew how much I wanted to do art full time. We'd had that discussion many, many times. And we went to, I think it was Cheddar's. We were at Cheddar's one night having dinner, and I was talking about it. And I think she just kind of got real sick of hearing me talk about how much I want to do it. And she banged her fist on the table, and she leaned in, and she got right in my face, and she looked me in my eyes, and she goes, "Then why aren't you doing it?" And
you're like,
then why aren't you doing it? Yeah. And I was just so taken aback, because she'd listened to me, and just, I'd always just kind of like been able to just talk to her about my frustrations about not doing it, and she'd always listened and never said anything. And that was the first time she was like, the why aren't you doing it? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, do it. And that was the moment where I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop talking about the thing and do the thing.
Yeah.
And I did.
Well, and again, when you know that you got to go out, kill it, drag it home, it's all on your shoulders. You no longer get to lay excuses at anybody's feet. It's not an owner of a company, because you are the owner of the company at that point. And it's all about decisions that you do and don't make from that point forward. Is, again, that's the terrifying part. It's not the idea of like, do I have the skill set to be able to do this? That's not even what's in question. Is my skill set enough to support me to do what it is that I want to do?
Yeah, I can remember that right after I decided that I was going to go full time with my painting, I'm very close with Lila's grandparents, not my parents, but her dad's parents.
Right.
We've always just been close. I'm close with her dad as well. We're great friends. But I've always just had a good relationship with his parents. And I was I decided that I was going to tell Lila's grandmother, my friend Barb, that I was going to stay home full time and pursue my art, and felt so worried about sharing that information with her. Like, she was going to be like, "Oh, I think that's just a really bad idea. I don't think you should do that. You should have some full time consistent work." And she was like, "Okay,
yeah,
okay, I support that." And I was like, felt like such a load off my shoulders to have that conversation with somebody whom I assumed was going to be like, "Yeah, I don't think that's a great idea. You should probably not do that. Like, find a real job." And she was very supportive of that decision, and still is. And I think I've been fortunate to not have many people say, "Yeah, that's probably not a great idea and you shouldn't pursue it." Everybody has been really supportive of that. I'm so thankful.
Yeah, well, and if you listen even to some of the most experienced and prominent business owners, CEOs that are out there, who started their company up as just a small nothing, right? And they knew like they were going to be feast or famine going into this deal. That all of them go in with some apprehension. All of them go in, you believe what I'm trying to start or what I have is of value. People will want it. They will support it. But then there's that backside of but what if?
But what if? There's
Yeah.
always the what if. And I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
You want to be prepared for the what
Sure.
if, but you don't want to live in the what if.
No, and people can get stuck in the what ifs, and then when things are not going well,
Yeah.
the what ifs become louder again. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that tape we were talking about. It just continues to kind of, let's go take this up to volume 10 here and run this in your head.
Yeah.
Then you start questioning the decisions. You know, it's interesting. I've seen some people in the Facebook page that said, man, whose idea was this to start my own business? Yeah.
Who thought of this genius plan?
Why did I not want to like stay in the corporate safe world?
Yeah.
But the
Well, I
reality is,
hated it there, but also I don't like to be told what to do. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, I mean, you can, you know, people who look at entrepreneurs and they think, oh, well, you're your own boss. I mean, they don't see the struggles behind everything there.
Sure.
You know, do I give myself the title of my own boss? Well, yeah, I guess I could, but does that really matter? I mean, at the end of the day, man, what matters is can I do this for a living? I don't need to be independently wealthy, which I will certainly take if that comes along. But I just need to make sure that I can provide a decent lifestyle to my family and myself. You know, during COVID, and we were kind of talking about when you started up, and you started up right there going into COVID.
a month before.
Yeah, and I was asking you, like, what was the impact? And you said it really wasn't that much of an impact, you know. But again, it was kind of also hard to gauge because there wasn't 2019 numbers to be able to
Right.
gauge in front of that. You know, for us at our worst point, man, we're 15% of our previous year's business, and you look at that and you're going, okay,
Yeah,
well, let's see. Yeah, we can't ride this out
we do.
forever, you know. And
do.
so you're sitting there looking at it going, the first thing that's most important, you know, and this is, again, I tell people, one of the things that people know about me if they work for me is I'm emotionally invested in my people when it comes down to the time that you know, we've given to them and they've given to us, right? But I'm not emotionally, I don't let emotions drive my decision making. And so the very first comment when we knew we were going to have to close down and we would have to furlough people, the first comment that I made was, we have to have a business to come back to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't want to furlough people. You don't want to lay people off, and you don't want to have to sit there and look at this as like, I'm going to have to cut somebody's income and do all of these other things. You don't want to have to make those decisions. But at the same point, if I don't make those decisions and we go under because I didn't make those decisions, then it doesn't matter. None of it matters. It all has to start with square one, which is the preservation of the business to come back to.
Yep.
Then we can worry about everything outside of that. If we can keep that under control and make sure that there's an avenue for people to come back to work, then the rest of it will take care of itself. And people, when our folks came back, I think they were more appreciative of not only the way that we handled it, but that they were more appreciative of a job that was just the assumption this is always going to be there for me.
Yeah.
Like, this is a great place to work, and this is where I'm going to be. And when it's you know, and you're sitting there doing it, again, it's not, you know, who do I have to lean into here? Like, hey, Lila, how's school today? You want to know how my day went today?
Oh,
You know, I
gosh,
mean,
yeah,
you don't want
yeah.
to pour that onto any of your family or your kids or anything along those lines, but also at the same point, you want to put up this front of, you know, things are fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be okay. You know, and you really need good mentors behind you, especially if you're in a solo entrepreneurial
Yeah.
role.
I mean, it's just me. Like,
You
know,
got to
I
have
help,
people
so.
behind you that can speak into you when you need it. And
Yeah.
and for the idea to think as an entrepreneur, you need to know all the answers and have all the answers. Dude, that's a bunch of hogwash. I mean, you know, you can always find people who've been there, done that, got the gold medal for it in the best case scenarios and in the worst case scenarios. And what's really funny is you can learn from both of those people. I tell people all the time, I work for some terrible bosses over the years.
Oh, I've had the worst of the worst. So.
But you know what's funny is I learned what not to do from those terrible bosses.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, I would have loved to have worked for all great people in that process, I learned the things that people didn't like and then went, don't ever do these things. So it was still a learning lesson either way.
It's such a learning lesson, and you find learning lessons in every aspect of life. And yeah, nobody likes to go through tough times and disappointments and horrible bosses and depression and anxiety. But man, the lessons they teach on the other end are so valuable for moving forward. And I've always wondered, I've always had this question in my mind of what makes somebody successful after trauma or after failure. What is the difference in somebody who takes that failure and moves forward and progresses in their lives and does better, and somebody that digresses into maybe addiction or giving up, if they just decide to give up in life, or they end up in jail, or they end up homeless. What is the factor? Because I feel like it has to be narrowed down to one or two things that helps decide whether you're going to take that trauma and that grief and that disappointment and that failure and move forward in life, or you're going to digress. What's the difference? And so I don't know if you have any insight into that, because I'd be curious to know, because there have been so many opportunities in my life where I could have just thrown in the towel and said, man, it's too hard. I can't do it.
There's a way to look at this. If you went through life and you never had any challenges, never anything to really put roadblocks in front of you, and everything just came. I mean, it just, it was everything you touched turned to gold. It was magic. What kind of life would you have long term, right? And what I think of is the adversities that people face in their life really creates the appreciation for that life long term. If I go through the fire to get to the other side, knowing that I can walk through the fire and I'm not going to die, I may come out with some scars and some burns and things along these lines, but I will have a greater appreciation for the effort that I took to get there, as opposed to the idea of it was, rose-colored glasses the whole way in my entire life.
Easy.
And what you find out of that is you then find a generation. Let me back that statement up. What you do is you find a group of people who, if it doesn't go well, that's somebody else's fault, because it's gone well my entire life, and it needs to go well the rest of the way. Adversity builds character. And then adversity also puts the path straight in what seems like a path that is not lit, that has no end, and it gives clarity to where it's at, as opposed to, so there's two roads I can put you on. This one over here, it's pretty jaggedy. It's got a lot of potholes. There's a lot of things in there. There's something at the end of this. And then here's this nice paved gold road that it's shiny. Everything's awesome. There's all kinds of great things along the deal. And there's something at the end of that as well, too. And an easy road traveled at the end doesn't breed any kind of aggressive stamina built up in those moments where you are faced with adversity. You really kind of look in and go, well, somebody over here didn't pave this part right. Look, the rest of this is all gold. Why is this little spot right here? Mm-hmm. And the person who's over here that sees one little piece of gold in that pavement, not in the pavement, but in the jagged road and everything else, looks at it and goes, wow, somebody's getting started here.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
that's
what,
so cool. It does build, it is character building, and I guess that's one way to look at it, but man, it's
your story, just like you said, where you were at the point of like, man, I'm ready to throw in the towel and be done with this. There'll be somebody else that'll come along in the we group or in your circle of people that will fight that same battle. And you'll be the testament.
I hope so, and I know there will be, but I hope that when that time comes that they would feel comfortable reaching out, because I would love to be able to give back what was given to me, which was hope and encouragement. And
understand that moment, my challenge of, when you hear people say, I need a good work-life balance, right? I mean, I was living in a world that really, there was a work balance for sure. There wasn't a lot of life balance on the backside of that, but I can use what I have learned to mentor people in environments that I never would have even anticipated. I took my car a couple of weeks ago to go get a headlight fixed on it that had broke, not during a hailstorm. I might have. I might have clipped a car pulling into a parking space.
Well, I won't tell
anybody. This is
anybody
really the old part of me.
Man.
I'm going to be turning into the old driver here.
You could have just said a hailstorm and left it at that, buddy.
I know. But then that person might be listening to this and goes, "That is not what happened."
Shoot.
And so, I did learn that it is the second most expensive headlight to break on a vehicle.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so I get there and I'm talking to this guy at this repair place. I won't say where it's at. But at this repair place, I was talking to this guy that was there, and he was explaining to me, like, this is his primary job, and he has another business. It's his, but his dad is helping to run it right now. But he literally leaves this job and goes to that job. He has 3 kids. He's married. And, he's going, I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to leave this job, and this will be the job that sustains me. And man, how many people can, relate to that? I got 2 jobs, 3 jobs, or whatever. And what you start recognizing in people when you're away from it, again, I could totally relate to that, especially when I was in the middle of it. But what you start realizing when you step away from it and you have a different set of clarity looking back into those things is you're going, what value is this carrying? What does it matter if I put $1 million in the bank and I'm divorced and my kids hate me? And I'm not there. I'm not a present dad. Let's say I missed the most important sports game, the most important recital, this one moment that can never be recreated, right? Let's say hypothetically, I lose an individual in my family that I didn't spend time with because of that job. And I don't value that time because I assume that it will always be there. And it's it'll be there at my convenience, not at a point where I make it a priority, right?
Man, that is a tough lesson to learn.
It is. And there's these moments that I can specifically point to in my life. But I'm talking to this gentleman and I was saying, for people, when is enough? Yeah. The raise is only as good until you spend the money. And it's gone. If you make it $100,000 a year and you move from $50,000 a year, typically what happens with about 99.9% of the population is lifestyle meets up to where that material good is at. And then when you get to here, then you're going, man, this isn't enough anymore. I need more. And so you step that up one more notch and you continue to look for the next golden carrot that you're constantly biting at, right? All at the expense of these people who are supporting you. I mean, the wife that's staying at home with these 3 kids and putting them to bed at night and washing them and reading stories to them and doing homework with them and everything else, because again, we're looking at it as I'm putting food on the table. I'm providing these moments. I'm allowing you to stay home so that you can take care of these kids. And then, there becomes this light bulb moment for a lot of people where they look at it and say, during my eulogy of when I'm gone and dead, do I want people to recognize how hard I worked? Or do I want them to recognize that I was present, that I was a good dad, a good spouse, that I was a good friend, that I was there when my friends needed me? And it's easy to get lost in those moments, especially in the corporate world where you feel like, I'm irreplaceable. I'm doing the things they've asked me to do. I'm a good employee for the company. And yet the reality, like when I left Walmart, the reality was there was another store manager there the next day.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, man. And I mean, all these people around you telling me, man, nobody's going to be able to replace you. But the next day I was replaced. And while I am still a legacy with a lot of people, and that was really kind of what I left with them, was the legacy of being not just a good manager. I wanted to be a good person with these people and know that I made a change and a difference for them. But at that same point, man, when it comes down to it, at the end of all of this, while I love that they would maybe get up and speak, I really would rather my family do that. I really would rather my family not be the one that suffers because of that lack of time, of having an employee get up there and talk about how much time I spent listening to their problems and everything else, and then having a spouse over there that's sitting there going, well, I wish you would listen to the problems that I had when we were trying to go through all this, So in speaking to this gentleman, I basically, long story short here, in speaking to the gentleman, it was, what's it worth to you? You're chasing this carrot, but what's it worth to you? And you need to understand the people who are most impacted by this, while it feels like it's you, like nobody understands what I'm going through, and this is really tough, and do you not think I want to be at home? You won't ever garner that time back. There is no amount of money. There is nothing of value that you can put to get the time back, or to get an instant back, or to get, your kid gets a all A's honor roll and is represented at the school in this little deal. You'll never get that time back or that moment back. And it's in your classification behind all of that of making that okay is, yeah, but if I wasn't working, I had to work because I got to pay for the mortgage, and I got to pay for your college, and I got to do all of these other things. Nobody ever, listen to this very clearly, ever on their deathbed says, I wish I'd have worked more. Yeah, ever. It is always met. If you talk to anybody that is you worked in a nursing home, right? If you
it's independent assisted living. But older age group.
If you talk to the people who handle hospice, who handle people in the later stages of their lives, or in a terminal stage in their life, those people all the time will tell you their regrets. They listen to them all the time, and none of them are met with, I should have spent more time working. Yeah. It's always spent with, I wish I'd have built a better relationship with my kids. I wish I'd have spent more time here. I now realize at the end of all of this that this was more important than that. And again, it's not until things hit really close to home for people that maybe comes on their radar.
It just makes everything else feel so insignificant.
It does.
You know what I mean? Because it's just not. Like at the end of it all, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to know that, man, I spent most of my life with my kid, and we love each other, and I've raised a human being that I feel confident is in the world doing this, living her best life.
Living in a world where she was able to see her mom doing something that inspired other people, that inspired her mom, and that it wasn't just a job, right? Like, you're not commissioning work and just going, here's another job for me to do. Yeah. You're doing what it is that you love to do and what inspires you.
Because my business is based a lot on people that find me on social media and people that contact me through social media or website. I do have to jump on those fairly quickly. And Lila has in the past been frustrated when she wants to watch a movie, and I can I do put my phone away or turn it off or put it on the charger in the other room and just take that time to spend with her. But also, like, owning my own business and being self-employed, I gotta kind of be pretty available to take an order pretty quick, or I lose it.
Yeah, this could be a $300, $500, $1,000.
Yeah, it's finding that fine line of this is my livelihood, but it's also my time with my kid. And so, like, I need to make this sale in order to be able to afford to spend the time with her, or like have the lights on, or go out to eat, or go see a movie together, which we haven't been to the theater in a year. But to be able to afford to do that, I am the only one in charge of who can do that. I don't have any other income coming in. Yeah. I don't have a spouse who works. It is solely my responsibility to provide for her, and that comes at a cost. Yeah. And I do have to provide for her. That's my responsibility in this life is to.
Well, and
she's little.
You're in a field of, like you said, you have a very small window to close that deal, right?
Very small
because
window.
There's a lot of people that are coming to you.
It's an impulse buy.
Yeah. Like, I was wanting to do this. Can you do this for me? And then
they want to hear yes immediately. Yeah. And then you got to be like, all right, here's how you order. Yeah. Here's the payment. Here's the process. Yep. I need this, and this from you. And then once the deal's kind of sealed, then I can put my phone away and we're good. But I need to kind of in that moment be able to turn it into a profitable thing for me, or else my business goes away.
Yeah, and if not anything, as an entrepreneur, I think one of the things that entrepreneurs need to be able to recognize is the idea, like, if you need that time, you don't have to run it by anybody.
Right.
You're your boss, right? I mean, that is the one upside to it, is if I need the time, I can take the time. Things being forced on you that that you don't have any control over and everything else. There's some structured control that can happen with an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur can choose to take a job or not take a job. They can choose to answer that phone or not answer that phone.
They can also choose to not work or procrastinate and not get the work done,
absolutely.
which can come back to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, well, that gives somebody else who's in the same field as you an upper hand. Okay, well, if you can't, then there's another one that I was looking at
nobody's telling me that I have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm the one in charge.
Yeah.
So unless I say, I have to have the self-discipline to do it.
Yeah, and we get very wrapped up in the idea of what we do is the single most important thing. Very quick story, and for people who were around in the early parts of 2000, y'all may have remembered at one point in the Bryan Supercenter, we had a picture of the store manager, which was me at the time, and a phone number underneath that at every register. And it said, if you have any problems, if you're standing in line, blah, 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 call this number. That number rang to a cell phone that I carried on my hip. And this was a brilliant idea of, I will not say this person's name on here because they're still working out there. But this was a brilliant idea of someone who didn't have the same priorities, family priorities that several of us had, who thought, man, wouldn't it be great if the customers could just reach directly to us and tell us when there's something going on in our store?
Instead of having to go through the chain of command.
Yeah, or call the store and ask for the manager on duty, right? And we were instructed that we were to answer this thing 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. The only time you never answered it was when you were on vacation, and you could then assign it to somebody else. But that means days off, you're answering this thing as well. And I can remember specifically one night getting a phone call from a guy who is just ripping me a new one about, standing in line at a Walmart.
Oh,
I mean, we were laughing about it. I was talking to my pastor about it. We were talking about standing in line, airing out laundry, and he happened to throw Walmart out there. And I go, why you throw Walmart out there? Because we're notorious for having lines, right?
Line standing, yeah.
And this guy is just ripping me a new one on the phone as I answered it. And he's like, where are you? I want to know where you are. Get your butt up here right now. Get this fixed.
Are you joking me? What?
And I said, well, sir, currently I am sitting down with my family having dinner at my house, but I'll be more than happy to get somebody up there to take care of that for you. And then he went, oh, man, why are you answering this phone? I'm so sorry. It said to call this number. I go, no, sir. You did exactly what we put that up there for, and I appreciate you calling. Now, did I appreciate it? No, I didn't appreciate it. But I gotta sell the story because that's what I'm being told I gotta do.
Yeah.
And we were the only district doing that in the entire company. The only district doing it. And it was absolutely ridiculous.
How long did that last? How long did
it
you do
lasted
that?
a solid 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
It was ridiculous.
Thanks,
and the day that we were told, like we changed supervisors at our district level. And the day that changed, there was, okay, we're going to do away with that, take all the photos down. And I literally can remember going into my office and throwing, we store used, that's what we called it, one of the little track phones, that we had to carry. I remember taking that thing and busting it up and throwing it in the trash can. And my wife was furious, and with all due right,
Yeah,
but at the same point, this is again where what's in your control, what's out of your control. I could choose not to follow the direction that's being given to me, and there's going to be a consequence to that. I could choose to step up and call into my corporate office and go, is this what the company wants us doing? Is answering a personal cell phone 7 days a week?
I've done it. Was on the other end of the personal, doing what you did with my personal cell phone, where I had to answer. Although I was not given a time frame of when it was, like there was no 7, like when and there was a text, so they didn't call. They couldn't call, but they would text.
Yeah.
And I had to answer that text if they texted in the middle of the night, I was expected to
ridiculous.
Reply.
So, there's something to be said. Was the pay good
over
in the
a
world?
weight loss challenge, might I add. So.
The pay was great and everything else.
Yeah.
Does it justify,
No.
an ends to the mean? No. And it definitely created a lot of ill feelings me personally towards my company, even though I knew it wasn't my company, it was a supervisor making the decision based on somebody else's brilliant idea, you know. But as an entrepreneur, it is kind of that same deal. I mean, you're sitting out there and like you said, something comes across. Do I want to answer this now? Do I want to answer this in the morning? The assumption from an entrepreneur wants to be, or some people would think, you know, I've gotten like ridiculous texts at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and some people on that other end, they're not, I don't know that they're expecting a response back right there at 2-3 a.m. or whatever, you know, but at the same point, there's boundaries that you have to set in order to have healthy boundaries in your own life, right? Yep. Otherwise, if you encourage it, you create it. Yeah. You know, it's like I said, speaking things into existence. Man, if I put a commercial out there that says, call us anytime.
Yeah, I don't answer emails on weekends.
We will answer you in the next 10 minutes. There will be people that will take to that challenge. Yeah. And so, you know, running your own business really does create this instant knee-jerk reaction of wanting to respond quickly, getting the customer on the hook, and then getting it all in cash and getting it paid for so that...
You know, if I paid somebody else to do that, it'd free up my, you know, then it would get done. But right now, I'm the only person that can do it.
Yeah, when you're independent and it is all you, then you got to make those decisions. And again, it's easy as a parent, we kind of sit back and go, man, what am I teaching my kid here too? You know, I never want my kid to feel like my phone's more important than she is, right?
Exactly. I've struggled with that too, because I get the feeling, and she's even come right out and say it, and she's like, you're always on your phone. I'm like, no, honey.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be.
I'm not trying to be. Yeah. I'd rather not. I do have moments now at times where she'll be like, oh, put your phone away. And I was like, okay, all right, it's going out, going away. Yeah. And I'll schedule time where I'm not distracted by
even
work.
In some cases where there's a lot of things kind of coming to the foresight here where you can have auto response things that kind of help identify to your customer, like, you know, I'll be out of pocket from this time to this time, but I'll respond to you at this time. I mean, some people do really well with that. Some people don't. And it just feels like, you know, when you're a customer, you feel like you get ghosted by a business or a business owner or whatever, then it's real quick to like, you know what, I'll just take my business somewhere else.
Cut them out.
But communication is probably the single most important thing you can do, even in those moments.
And I had to learn that the hard way, because especially when, let's say I've had a commission come in and I am just struggling to feel like painting, and a couple of weeks have gone by and they're messaging me like, hey, just, you know, hey, just check in. How's it going? I will put off reading those, because you know that they can see when you've looked at it. It says seen.
You're like, don't open that.
Do not open it. And
you're on Facebook and your face goes down to there.
I did it for so long, and what I realized was that honesty is always the best policy. It took me forever to learn that, because it felt like if I could just make an excuse or avoid it, and then I wouldn't have to deal with it and it would go away. What I found was that as if I just open it, answer it, and I'm honest, like, hey, I haven't gotten started on it, or, you know, I'm about finished with it. It'll probably be a couple more days. And they've gotten an answer from me, and then it's off my plate, and I don't feel guilty about it. But letting it sit in my inbox, knowing that they're like TikTok, time, like, let's go. I commissioned this 3 weeks ago. Time, you know, I need it now. That pressure, instead of letting it build up and pretending like it's not there, if I just answer it immediately, it's a lot less stress and pressure.
Well, and they question their importance to your business. I mean, ultimately that's, when you don't answer it or you choose not to answer it quickly or whatever, they question the importance of their business to you. Yeah. So let's wrap this thing up and bring this thing around. We were talking about, you touched on this a little bit earlier, so I want to go back and touch on it again. Vision and your goal. And I put on here vision and goal for your business and for your art part of the business or whatever. And not necessarily 2021, because I know 2021 is still kind of up in the air. I mean, there's still things going on.
Yeah, we're not even halfway through it, but we're getting close.
Yeah, I'd kind of in pre-show it asked, was your goal to maybe have a gallery one day or something along those lines? Where do you see like you eventually And it's not the be all to end all, but where do you see like your next step going? I was talking about, were you going to have like a storefront, or were you looking to do a storefront? And you were kind of like, I'm looking to really kind of do less of this and be more of are you looking to be more of like a conduit to other artists, or?
I think my long-term goal, and I don't know as far as long-term, I have no timeline for when this will happen.
Yeah.
I would really, I think, enjoy not doing commissions. I'm so thankful for commissions and having them right now,
Sure.
and the business that it brings me and the connections
Sure.
that I make doing commissions, and I really do enjoy them. It is a lot of pressure to paint what somebody else wants you to paint. Mm-hmm. So I think that the goal for me is to be able to create with with it not being within somebody else's confines of expectation.
Yeah.
And so being able to put out what is in my head and my creativity coming out on canvas or paper or whatever medium I'm using, and for people to look at that and connect with it in a way where they want to. I think I honestly think that's the goal of every artist, is
Sure.
to be able
Create your own line.
to create your own line,
Yeah.
to have something that's recognizable and that people know that that's what you've done and what you've painted, and to see worth and value in it. And that it's something that's already created. That also enables me to paint on my own timeline.
Right.
And so then I'm eliminating that, oh, well, gosh, I've got a deadline coming up and I'm not in the mood to paint, and I don't
Right.
feel like painting. I create when I feel like it. And so obviously the goal is to become a big enough name is where my paintings, people are waiting for them to come out and be like,
Right.
oh gosh, I wonder when her next big piece is going to be, and I want to be the first to snatch it up. To create value within my work. And I think every artist kind of wants to do that. And there may be some that are just happy doing commissions forever. I don't feel like that's me. I do see the value in commissions here and now, and I will continue to do those for as long as it takes, or as long as I need to, or as long as necessary, to kind of catapult me into a different bracket, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and you're in an interesting field where you don't necessarily need to have a storefront, a gallery, or
Right.
whatever. Do people potentially think that lends more credibility having those things, or having your stuff on display somewhere? Maybe. I mean, I listen, I'm definitely not the art
I don't know.
connoisseur by any stretch.
It'd be cool to have my own gallery.
Yeah.
I just see that to me, that just is expensive.
Yeah.
But-
Well, and that's kind of why I was asking about the conduit piece there, of like, springboarding other artists as well into the limelight of people, but being the conduit that kind of connects those two up.
Yeah.
As your name gets bigger and you continue to do things in the community, or just in the field in general. I say in the community, like you're only tied down into the Bryan College Station area. I mean, you can do it for anybody anywhere, but also being able to create that branding really is kind of what we're talking about, where the name becomes the brand, and then the product becomes attached to all of that. And then it's like,
Yeah, I also don't
now
want to
collaboration becomes,
Yeah.
if I'm new artist coming up, and if I could hook up with Beth Symons, that would be awesome. Beth could get me squared away. I could have my stuff hanging in her gallery. That would be awesome. But also not diluting your brand as a part of that as well either.
Yeah, I also don't want to box my brand in, because I have such a diverse style. I don't want to box myself into pet portraits. I don't want to box
Right.
myself into just doing one thing. I would be opening to the larger box I'd like to box myself into is just a freestyle. And I think I'm still kind of looking for what exactly that is that becomes what I'm known for.
Yeah.
Right now I'm known for pet portraits. Right
Yeah.
now I'm known for recreating photos. And I am so thankful for that, but I'd kind of like to stray away and find my own niche of recognizable Beth Symons art.
Yeah. Again, I'm not an art connoisseur by any stretch of the means, but when you're saying things like that, I think about things like Thomas Kinkade, where that you see a Thomas Kinkade, number one, that it's his style. But number two, it's mostly all like structured paintings, literally structures like buildings and, houses and
It's
things
very
like that.
recognizable.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's the brand, again, that's been built up forever, that
I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like.
I really have
it's not my
even
personal style.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying.
But that's kind of the point is, at his, and I wouldn't even say his highest
or
point.
like Benjamin Knox.
Yeah. Local. I mean, at the highest points for these guys, even so, like where it's in high demand and everything else, there's still an ebb and a flow for it, right? Like when I say the name Thomas Kincaid, for a lot of people, they go back and go, man, that was a long time ago.
That was like, like 1990s?
Yeah. But to me,
big.
that was very recognizable and one of those, like I can remember.
What is it? Painter of Light?
Yeah, I think that I want to say in the mall in San Antonio, there was actually a Thomas Kincaid store.
Oh, I know for sure there was in the mall where I grew up.
Yeah, so
especially around Christmas time, that was that.
Yeah,
I always had that Thomas Kincaid.
Yeah, somehow it got attached to Christmas
church
and stuff
too. Like all the church people had Thomas.
Anyway. Yeah, but again, and maybe not necessarily this national branding of all of that. I mean, it can start here locally and push its way out or whatever, but I think the other part of that is social media will push so far. Your website will push so far, and it definitely is an entrepreneurial field where you don't necessarily have to have the four-wall storefront in order to be a legitimate artist.
Exactly,
right?
Which cuts down on my overhead costs a whole lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and until you establish yourself in that particular situation, it's kind of like, okay, I'm doing pretty good here on commission sales. Let's go ahead and go find a $3,000 a month place to hang all these things in.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that becomes that again.
If I can afford that at some point, that'd be great. But the goal right now is to keep overhead costs as low as possible while still creating quality pieces.
Sure.
Which is a balance, and making a living as an artist is not easy. And people will tell you, man, it's feast or famine. And it is.
Yeah,
the goal is to work through that and become more feast than famine.
Yeah, there's a reason why they say starving artist.
Starving artist. I've got a friend and her Instagram name is Not a Starving Artist Girl. Because she, I don't want to be I'm not starving.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And I think my goal in life and in art has always just been to grow and be better, and to always learn, to absorb information, to educate myself, to practice, even if if I don't see value in it, there's value in the learning and the if I think that it's not quality art, then I've learned something about the process of it or the creation of it or the technique of it. There's always learning in everything that you do.
Well, and you continue to raise your threshold of what you consider acceptable, as you continue to move things up, even though your daughter's snatching it out of the backsides of the trash cans or whatever.
I know, she did that. Lila would always take work that I threw away and pull it out of the trash can and hang it up in her bedroom. And I was like, oh God, I hope nobody sees that. She loved it. And it was encouraging to me to see that she found value in it even when I didn't.
Yeah.
Was a very sweet thing for her to do. But yeah, if it weren't for all the pieces that I've thrown away, I wouldn't be able to look back at where I started and where I am now and see the growth and the difference that just time lends itself to, creates when you're doing it every single day for years on end. If you're not growing, then something's wrong. Well,
and you have to be doing something right when you have people of certain stature within the community that know you by name.
Recognize you.
They may not necessarily be able to pick you out in a crowd or whatever, but as soon as you say the name, they affiliate that back.
Yeah, you're the artist.
Like I said, I have seen way more of your stuff popping into my feed, not by you going out going, hey, let me go spend $1,000, get this in your feed. It's because other people are recognizing not just the value in it, but recognizing the artistry that goes along with it.
That's such a cool feeling.
And having your name attached to that. And again, you kind of unveiled you've taken the more corporate name off of it and put it more back to where it's individualized with your name as a part of Beth Symons Fine Art, so you get this opportunity to build your name within a community and then it push out from there, because there'll be people here that will commission you for work that'll move somewhere else. It's going to be a talking point in their living room, their bedroom, their whatever office, and so this organic piece of putting pieces out there that not only that you're proud of, but that somebody else has seen their vision come into reality that you created for them, and then them be just as proud of that 10 years later as they were when they got it day one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I think
huge.
the goal for me is to always be outgrowing the box I'm putting myself in.
Absolutely.
So I've put myself in the commission box, and I'm pushing against those boundaries of where I can take it. And once I've outgrown that, then I'll find another box and I'll get comfortable in there, and I'll learn everything there is to know about what's inside of that particular area of expertise or that box that I've placed myself in, but to never stay there.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to stay in that box. I always want to learn everything I can about that, and then use it to propel myself to the next level.
Yeah, be the master of your domain, but also be the student of the art as well too. Don't let the art dissipate in the domain.
That's the goal. So that's what I'm always working towards. I think when it comes to my art is not staying stagnant in one place, but really just pushing the boundaries of how far I can take it and where I can take it.
Well, and also understanding you're also being an inspiration to other people. I saw Edwina had posted so
she's so sweet.
After seeing Beth Symons painting these things and everything and talking to her, it opened up this avenue for me to pick this back up. And I think she said she hadn't painted in like 25 years or something like that.
Yeah, she's so good at it.
She really is.
She's so good. And I just want to encourage her to keep going, and that it's, what she's done is just beautiful. And that's where she's starting after 25 years. Imagine where she could take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love seeing that, and I love hearing that I've encouraged her in some way to pursue that again.
So knowing that people are also watching from the outside as well. It's not just, I feel like I'm on this lone island by myself trying to grow this part of my business, that you're also inspiring other people to pick up and do.
I think often about where I started and where I am now. And I think if you had gone back to 2014, this is something I think of way more than I probably should, which is so weird. If you had taken a piece of art that I have done in present day and shown it to me back in 2014 when I started, if I could go back in time and to my former self and take that picture and say, hey, guess what? You did this. Wow. In 2020. Look, you did this. I'd be like, get out of here. There's no way. That's so good.
Well, and better yet, if they could have took it back even before then.
Or even, when I was a kid and showed me that and said, hey, you're going to create this one day. This is what you're going to do with your life. Yeah. And this is, I struggle with the word talent, because I hear often, you're so talented. And I think, and I was blessed, obviously, with an inherent talent that I was born with. Sure. However, I don't want the talent to diminish the work. Yeah. The effort that I've put in, the struggle, the nights where I've stayed up all night, tediously painting every detail, or learning through failure and just practicing every single day for years and years on end. So there's an element of talent, and then there's an element of, I've screwed this up a lot, and now I'm going to do it better. Yeah. Well, and also knowing that your trials and tribulations of what's working, what's not working, continuing to build your skill set in your environment of choosing to do, not like taking it somewhere and like going to school or whatever for it, and then having it really kind of cut up and commercialized, and then that materializes into something that's not really what an original would have been from you. The idea that this is, God-given talent that then produces itself, that you continue to improve on, but not to the point of going. Right. It's not that I don't have a say in it. Yes, I was given the talent, but God gave me the talent in many areas. I play the piano beautifully. I always have, but I can't read music. I sing. I've tried out for American Idol, and that was God-given talent that I haven't really done much with. That exists. Yeah. So painting, I was given this God-given ability to paint, but I've taken it and developed it over the years. And you have to. Talent will only take you so far. Yeah. It's the perseverance and the hard work and the failing and then rising again and drive, and desire, the drive to do better. So talent is such a small part that's played out. in success. I think it's an important part. If you don't have it, then you may not be quite as successful as you like to be, because I think there's a lot of things that can be learned.
Yeah.
You can take somebody who is not talented in painting and teach them how to do it.
Sure.
But it helps to kind of have that base of God-given ability, but also the work is not to be overlooked.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's get everybody plugged in so that they know how to get back to you if they're looking to commission something or just want to reach out to you and kind of bounce some ideas off of you, what it would cost and stuff. So let's talk about website first. So if they want to reach you on that's probably ideally where you want them to go.
I'd like to drive more traffic. There is a new website with the name change and everything. I went and just finished and created a whole new website by myself. So,
right. So I'm going to spell this out for everybody, because anybody that hears the name Symons is probably going to spell it wrong. So it's Beth Symons Fine Art, and it's Beth spelled Beth, Symons spelled Symons, and then Fine Art, FINEART.com. So that's the website that they can redirect to. You've got information on there.
Yep.
You also have contact information on there where people can fill out stuff and get to you that way. They can also email you, same deal, Beth Symons Fine Art at yahoo.com. You also have your Facebook page as well too, Instagram. You've
direct
got
messaging works.
Yep.
You can send me a message. I'm checking throughout the day, and I'll get back to you pretty quick on that.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. So, man, so grateful for you to come in and spend some time sitting down talking to me.
I really enjoyed it so much. You're a hoot to talk to.
We're on 218 over here.
Woo.
So, but I really appreciate you coming in and spending some time talking about, really just the talent, the sheer skill set that you brought to the table. I look forward to seeing more and more of your pieces. Every time you post something, I'm like, that's so cool. And, I got 3 dogs, so yeah, I probably won't commission you for any
come
on. Stuff. But, there's times where,
if we do them all in the same painting, is that something we could talk about? Because then I would just want to thank you for your time today. We've spent the last 4 hours, over 4 hours together, getting to know one another and talking about business and life. And as my way of saying thank you, I think we can work something out.
We appreciate that.
Hey.
And in our family, there are our family dogs, right? 2 of those dogs are my wife's dogs, and one of them really is mine. It's supposed to be Abigail's, but I take care of the other one probably more than anything else. And there are some days, man, that those dogs, they're just like kids, man. They will challenge you. So,
but we love them.
But just fantastic stuff that you're turning out. I'm so grateful to call you friend, be able to sit down here with you and learn more about your business. Aphantasia,
we could probably have a whole podcast on that. If you're not familiar with it, go look up Aphantasia. It's P-H-A-N-T. I don't have it in front of me here, so
I actually have it spelled out. Aphantasia. And really, I would tell people, type that in on YouTube.
Yes, type it in on YouTube.
I looked at it on a website, and it's, granted, there's an explanation on there, but YouTube has some very interesting videos on it.
Sure
and it really kind of describe it visually for a lot of folks.
And so what that is, if you didn't catch the beginning of the podcast, aphantasia or aphantasia is the inability to see things in your mind's eye, which means it's just mental blindness, really. And so if you close your eyes and there ain't nothing there, then you have aphantasia. If you see pictures and stuff, hit me up. I want to know what that's like. I need to know.
Tell you what, man, I close my eyes and I can envision your business, shooting through the roof as people continue to learn about you and continue to see this stuff going on. What a
nice way to wrap up.
I'm going to tell you, man, there ain't no black. There ain't no black in my mind when I'm sitting there closing my eyes and looking at this.
That was good, Lowell.
You're going to do great. I'm telling you, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your business, excited for your launch of your website.
Thank you.
And really, for folks that are out there, I hope a lot of them will kind of chime in on this and comment about, if they've commissioned you for work or whatever. It's always nice to hear from folks who've been there, done that, so that they can really speak to it.
My old email address got hacked. And so if you've sent me an email or if I've overlooked a commission that I was supposed to do for you, I promise you that was not ever intentional. I don't think that's happened. But I've lost your information and don't get it. So reach out to me again at all the new information.
That's right. Beth Symons Fine Art at yahoo.com.
I want to make it right. I promise I'm not avoiding you.
Listen, man, you're a busy woman. Nobody's going to accuse you of not being busy. So.
Oh, yeah.
But we appreciate you coming in and spending time with us today. Grateful to have you come in and talk about it.
Thank you.
Again,
we'll
Beth
get a better
Symons.
handshake when we're not constrained.
We will.
By
It's always hard in here too. And for the people on the audio, they don't ever see it anyway. It's only the YouTubers that get to see it. So, but Beth Symons, grateful again for you coming in today and talking about it. Wish the best for you and your business.
I appreciate you,
guys. We appreciate your time. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later.
Bye bye.